Lewiston City Council work session in order. Before we move to the next order of business, I would like to know that Councilor Lidke pledges to be here. She may be a few minutes late. And then I'd like to read a statement from Councilor Kleberg's family. Councilor Kleberg has missed the last few council meetings, but I would like this on the record before we move on. Jim Kleberg and his family are dealing with a complicated medical issue and appreciate your thoughts and prayers. At this point, Jim will not be participating in city politics for a few weeks. We will update you when we have more information. So the family gave me permission to share that with you. And with that, we will move to the next order of business, the Pledge of Allegiance. If you please will stand and recite the pledge with me. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Our next order of business is citizen comments. And this is an opportunity for citizens to address the council on agenda items or other items they wish to bring to the attention of the council. Citizens are encouraged to discuss operational issues in advance with the mayor. In consideration of others wishing to speak, please limit your remarks to 3 minutes. Also, the Lewiston City Council pledges to practice and promote civility within the governing body, advocating for civil engagement, respecting others and their viewpoints, and finding solutions for the betterment of the city of Lewiston. If you're here today to provide citizen comments, I would ask that you come up to the front of the room and stand at the podium. There are at least 3 microphones overhead. They're the little round 8-inch looking discs above your head. You'll have to speak slowly and loudly, clearly, project your voice a little bit so those at home can hear what you have to say, and those in the back of the room especially can hear what you have to say. So with that, I will open it up for any citizen comments. When you come up, please introduce yourself, your city of residence, and you'll have 3 minutes. Citizen comments are open. Welcome.
Thank you. My name is Carl Walker. I live in Lewiston, Idaho at 2316 3rd Avenue North. I'm here as a concerned citizen for a few reasons. Number one is I love my community. And I got involved with minor city politics when they had the recall and we started our mayor thing. I also attended a lot of meetings. And from attending those meetings, we all feel a frustration of government things going on today and how hard it is for us, or how it seems like the pressure's been built up. I was hoping we could avoid that with our city. And it doesn't seem like we can. And from that standpoint, I think about the fact that from being in some of these city meetings, I hear about a lot of comments from the councilors and city attorneys and things like that is, I think this, I think that. That doesn't matter what you think. What matters is what the people think that you represent. The people who are out there. The people whose money you're spending. So I beg you, I implore you, I have lived here my whole life. My family's lived here their whole life. We want to continue that. The county taxes on our homes is pushing us out. All the other things are it keeps going on and on and on. When does it stop? And I don't think that the council is to blame for everything, that they're bad people and everything. But any city that's been ruined, Portland, Seattle, and everything, it's been the city councils that's done it. It's their job to keep us safe, handle our money wisely. Please do that. Please help us. And with the water situations and the bursting of the thing up there, I have no idea. I drove by it today and nothing's been done. Why? Doesn't common sense just say, rather than go through all the crap, just fix it? Or get a hold of the people who are responsible for not keeping the alarms up. Go take care of business. Sometimes you seem to make it more complicated than it has to be. I've got 2 words for you. Common sense. We can look at all the numbers we want. We can look at all the surveys. Common sense is what helps us to get it done, helps us to be neighbors. Thank you.
Thank you, Carl.
My name's William Stickler. I live in Valley Vista Edition. And it's on the water thing. And I understand, yeah, we're cutbacks and all that and everything. And you guys in your outline in your schematic there that you have a gray area that's not covered under that, right in the middle of that section. And I'm wondering why. And also, we're cut back so much water, we invested, like ours is a new home up there, invested over $10,000 in vegetation on this property. I don't want it to go down the tubes. I've done everything I tried to bypass that water in the air. But I want a little food of thought here is, you know the land below that's got 150 cows on it, right? McCann land, which basically seems to run this city. There's 1,200 cows, and you can look this up on Google. A 1,200-pound cow drinks 12 gallons a day. At 150, that's 1,800 gallons a day. In a week, that's 12,600 gallons. Okay, they calved this spring, and they lactate, so they've got calves, okay? A lactate cow drinks approximately double that, 24 gallons a day. And so that's 12,600 gallons a week. And, excuse me, I'm sorry, that was a day. They drink 25,000 gallons of water a week. This is not right. We got a feedlot in the middle of the city drinking up our water when they can take those cows to pasture. He has the land, and they needed to be something done about getting away with what he's doing. It's not right. That land was never farmland. That land, I grew up here for 74 years, and there was never a cow on that land until they built Bryden Canyon. When Bryden Canyon was developed, they leveled it out down there, and he brought his cows in, and he feeds them year-round. He does not take them to pasture. So that means they're drinking year-round off our aquifer. When they can, part of the year, they can go to pasture. This is not right. Our water is valuable for everything. We have one of the biggest aquifers in the state right here under us. But, just like the other man says, there's no proactive people taking care of the situations. I understand that that's been leaking for quite a while, the basin that gave way. It needs to be fixed. Like he said, nothing's being done. I drove by there too. You know, water's life. Let's get it done, get it over with, so we all don't have to live with it the whole summer long. Somehow, you need to cut back on the courthouse, the city construction, whatever you can't do or put aside to later. Water's more important than any of these other situations.
Thank you, William.
Thank you.
I'm Linda Gephardt, and I live at 2510 Seaport Drive in Lewiston. And I'm formerly from Nevada. When we had a water crisis down there, we did an odd and even watering. To think that you're going to be able to water less with a hose, you're out of your minds, because you're going to use so much more. You know, drips, I use all drips. I'm going to continue using my drips because I'm not going to let my trees die. And I use a hell of a lot less water than if I was just a hand hose. It doesn't make any difference whether it's got a nozzle on it or not. You know, I open mine up and I water. So I don't know how you can justify that we're gonna use less by hose watering, because we're not. I'm not, I'm not new to gardening, that's for damn sure. So I was letting you know.
Thank you, Linda. Welcome, Brian.
Hi, thank you. Brian Rothhughes, 1215 Prospect Avenue. So a couple of items. Also concerned about the water restrictions and how severe they are and how quickly they came on board. I think they caught all of us unaware. I got to look into the last thing on the website, last information, March 28th. There was a note in there that we could expect some watering restrictions, and I understand that. That makes sense. But I was preparing through the month of March for some type of a rationing, not where something that's so severe. And then that it came through the newspaper. With all due respect, Mayor Johnson, Dan, we're friends. I wish you had been there on that rather than it coming through. We talked about that, and I appreciate you taking my call. But going forward, I would rather see somebody that we've elected more engaged in that. And I know I know how hard you work. I know you've got to be engaged, but in the public comment, I think we need that. I've talked to a number of people who, were a little frustrated. It's like, well, we elected a mayor, and where is he in all this? So the other thing I asked for is some way to come up with a less restrictive water reduction. I can make we've lived in our place 20 years. We've done thousands of dollars of landscaping, just like there's, a lot of people obviously have. We spent the whole month of March preparing for trying to renew some things and spending lots of money and lots of labor. And we would like, I think I can make it work if I could at least deep water once a week. If we could come on, as was mentioned, some type of a rationing schedule rather than the restrictions. I don't know how that fits in the system. Also, to echo some of the other comments, I haven't had a sense of urgency through all of this either. I suspect there is, but I don't feel that. It wasn't, I was caught unprepared because to me, it just seems like this is one of many things, but it's bigger for all of us. And I hate to see, Harris Field turn brown and, the football field and, things I know there are people in our neighborhood who aren't going to be physically able to water their stuff. I hate to see all the trees, there's just, come August, if this isn't taken care of, and there's a good chance of it from what I read, there's going to be some serious property damage. And the city's already, on the hook for possibly for, the flood damage over there near Sunset Park. And I just don't want the city to suffer, and I want our yard is an extension of our home, and I want to be able to protect it as best we can, and I appreciate your help with that.
Thank you, Brian.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Susan Scully. I'm a lifelong Idahoan of 65 years. I live at 2428 Seaport Drive, and my main concern is the situation itself. I'd like you to get this reservoir fixed and water back to the people as soon as possible. I'm not sure why it has taken so long to notify us. I'm very concerned about that. And I like the ideas coming from the people. And the rotating schedule, that was something I was going to ask for. But one thing I don't understand on the list of questions is it says you can use a soaker hose, but on the other side it says no, everything has to be handheld. Well, the nature of a soaker hose isn't to hold it in your hand, it's to hook it to your hose, turn it on. And I don't understand the difference of me standing anywhere with the hose for 10 minutes or turning it on with a timer for 10 minutes. That doesn't make sense to me. And one of the reasons I ask is I have a neighbor with arthritis. and she called and was told, oh, I can use my soaker hoses, but they're on a timer. She can't stand there and hold her hose for hours and hours of a day to just keep her shrubs and trees looking good, let alone her lawn. That's a separate issue. So that really, really does concern me. And if it's a matter of money, then I agree. We need to stop some other projects and get the money on this project and get this taken care of right away. I also feel that these restrictions are very punitive to those of us who are paying the bills and have paid the bills, rather than getting the information out about what is the city doing, how is the city paying for this, and how soon can we get this done. And I also noticed that, excuse me, some of the golf courses are on their own wells, so they will be able to water, but Bryden Canyon Golf Course isn't, and we've been paying for their water for quite a long time. I would like to see them get their own well and put their own water in and not be using our money for that system. I also noticed when looking at this, and I hadn't noticed before, that our water rates went up in October of '22, and our water rates are already very high. So when you get this elder well situation taken care of, I am concerned about the high water rates and the wastewater fee that we heard about in our bill last week. So that aside, thank you.
Thank you.
We'll give it a try, okay?
Randy's gonna talk.
But,
There was some here.
okay,
Go ahead.
I thought you were gonna go, Dave.
well, either one.
Oh, you go. Age before beauty.
Well, I gotta tell you that there's something to be said about that age. I watched Randy grow up right below where we live. They were good kids, neighbors. I'm Dave Bundy. My wife and I have lived at, stand up. Hold that. My wife and I have lived at 358 West Swallowsview Drive in the Echo Hills area for 1974, 77, 47 years. My primary back then was real estate. And I helped with builders to help develop all that area out there. And there was a huge amount of money even back then went into that neighborhood up there with shrubs and trees, mature trees now, and everything else go with it. And for the city of Lewiston to sit here and tell me that I can't water my lawn until the middle of July sometime, to me is absolutely ludicrous. In the first place, it's already been proven earlier today that there is some reason to believe, I should say, it's been proven that, that timers and certain stages of water areas that you can water that are on timers has already been proven to help save water in the long run. And I look up and down our neighborhood out there, and I see all these mature trees and shrubs and lawns, and you're gonna kill them. You're absolutely gonna kill those shrubs and trees if we don't find some way to get water to those shrubs and trees. I mean, it doesn't take a rocket science to figure that one out, for crying out loud. Now, I can go on over to some other areas. We have our own, by the way, there's a water well right on about the 3,000 block of Country Club Drive, which is just north of Shiloh and within 500 feet of where Echo Hills is. I mean, it's just, and why are we being penalized for water when our water is being provided? That's an entirely different drainage over there where that reservoir went out. Totally different drainage. It's got nothing to do with what we have out in our area there in Echo Hills. Now, you might say, yes, it does, but if you look on the map that the city sent out to us, overlay, basically what you have done is you have put everybody who's on domestic water on a ration, not even a ration system, to just shut us off. I don't think that's right. We talk about the NEIAs. I got a lot more questions here, but we've got these teams coming here. The people follow those teams. It means a lot of money to Harris Field. And they're gonna let it dry up and blow away. Same with the football fields for the or the school districts. I mean, this whole plan is just absolutely, folks, is ludicrous. Absolutely ludicrous. And while I'm on it, what about car washes?
Your 3 minutes are up. Could you
Button it up,
button it up?
shut the trap?
No, we just need to bring your comments to a close.
Oh, we'll do that. And let me talk, what about car washes? How many gallons of water is used by these different car washes that are around town here? You don't see, you're not putting them out of business. They can operate. But I'm gonna sum it up here, but to me, we just need to find another plan here. I like the even odd days of irrigating. It makes sense. On timers, it makes sense. But to shut the entire water system off, no. Makes no sense at all. Thank you. Thank you. Anybody would like to talk to me afterwards, I'd be glad to say something.
Randy Johnson, 2400 block of Seaport Drive, neighbors with half this crew over here. We could talk all day long about what we need to do to get this done. That's your job to figure out how to do it done yesterday, in my opinion. So I'm asking you as leaders to figure that out. What the concerns I have are the people, and I know there's some in this room right now that have spent thousands of dollars putting in new lawns this year, all to lose that. One story, $6,000 a lady spent, and you know, that's gonna be down the drain, figuratively speaking. I know that there are business owners in this room right now that are in the landscape business. What happens to their business? I'm concerned about their livelihoods. Here's my proposal. My property taxes went up 71% over prior year. How about let's get to work using some of that money yesterday? So that's all I've got.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Hi there. I'm Jim Cook. I actually live out of town, but as a business owner of Green Giant Landscaping, I have customers of concern. No more homeowner, yes, I understand the concerns of having to hand water, but I have a couple customers, one in particular that I'm here for today, Vandervert Development up there at Nez Perce Plaza, taxes over $395,000 a year. So how are you supposed to water? There's 97 stations. Millions and millions of dollars in landscaping up there. That half of it is in the city code where you have to put in grass so it, develops that you got to put every 35 feet, you got to put a tree and 5 plants in between, all these codes that you guys have put in place. And just to let it die on these big monster properties, let alone what it's gonna do to affect my business, other sprinkler companies' businesses, mowing businesses, all the businesses that it will affect. He brought a good point up about car washes. How is that fair that, they're able to do that, but yet we're not able to water our lawns? It's these trees produce oxygen, which we all breathe. Okay, and if they all die, it's not a good thing. So I'll just sum it up at that, but I think you need to look at the places at least that can't go out and hand soak. Schweitzer Engineering, another one. Big properties that really need you to look at before you just say no watering. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim.
Thank you.
Thank you. My name's Kaylee Casper. I live at 1834 Broadview Drive.
Sorry, I can't hear you. Could I ask you to speak up a little bit? Yeah.
My name's Kaylee Casper. I live at 1834 Broadview Drive. And first, I just want to say this is my first council meeting that I've attended, and I've been lacking as a citizen, so hopefully I'll work to rectify that in the future. But I just want to tell you guys, I'm not here for blood, but I am here for answers and action. First, I'd like to say that the notification system when the water tower did go out was lacking. The reason I was notified is because I have a 6-year-old in kindergarten that attends McSorley, and that school was shut down. The school was shut down 2 hours before school started. Luckily, I have a very understanding boss and employer, and I was able to rearrange plans to care for my child that was not going to be able to attend school. Once we realized that we were also affected by the water, we thought, we've got to tell our neighbors. They don't have children in the school district. I didn't get a notification by phone, email, Facebook. However, they are retired, and so we took it upon ourselves to be good neighbors and tell them, our water is not good. Do not use it. I don't know more. As soon as I know more, I will let you know more. I feel like I hope we learned something from that as a community, and we've taken things and started to be proactive on how to communicate problems with infrastructure, and hopefully that doesn't happen again, but if it does, we have a way to notify our citizens. Also, this incident was not an act of God, but a gross oversight of assessment, planning, and management. The total water restriction hinders my ability and my family's ability to provide a garden for my family. We're a young family. I've got a 6-year-old, a 3-year-old, and a husband. We both work full-time, but to make ends meet, we put in a garden every year to be able to cut our bills down. And we use that garden through canning and preserving year-round. I'm just asking you that you look at a rotating schedule. I work full-time as a nurse. My husband works full-time at Clearwater Paper. And I'm gonna be honest, if I have to hand water my garden, it's gonna cut down on my other responsibilities. As a mother, as a nurse, time with my family, which is very important to me. And I would ask that we look at an efficiency study to see, is this more efficient? If we are gonna be on a total restriction, let's find the most efficient way to be on a total restriction. Is hand watering the most efficient? Is using a timer and a landscaping system like we've invested in, is that the most efficient? Also, who decided this? These are questions, like I said, that I'm looking for answers and action for today. Also, do you need help? Do you need help with the infrastructure, with volunteering to fix, to mitigate damages? I am here to help. I want to make a difference. I want to make everybody's lives easier. And I feel like everybody who made the attempt to be here today or will review the meeting minutes later also wants to help. Like I said, I'm not here for blood, but I would like answers and action, and I am here to volunteer if there's a sign-up list later. Thank you.
Welcome in.
I'm Ada Eldridge, I live at 1728 10th Street. I wasn't planning on saying anything when I was here, but I started thinking when people were talking that the water restrictions are going to create a fire hazard this summer. And usually when the 4th of July comes around, we're like a tinderbox already anyways. So I can imagine it's gonna be a lot worse with all the yards dried up and all the shrubs and everything around town dried up. So I just wanted you guys to maybe think about that so that we don't go up in flames this summer for the 4th of July, even though we can't have fireworks over here. People are always shooting off fireworks over here. You know, we've had fires. And I was wondering, isn't it possible to do something like alternate days of the week, like Lloyd does with irrigation, maybe like Monday and Tuesday and Thursday and Friday? Have them be watering days, alternate days. And it kind of, you know, my yard's always dead anyways, even when I do water it. So it doesn't really matter to me. I'll give up my water, my ration to someone else because I don't really care. But, you know, people do care. And people are going to care if places start catching on fire this summer when it gets to be 100 degrees. So I just kind of want to implore you to look again. And, you know, I think personally to the citizens of this town, to say we did look again and we're changing our minds and we're doing something, I mean, people are going to like that. People are going to like that more than all these people coming here and talking and then next week going home and being like it doesn't matter that we went to a meeting and we talked, you know, because we don't get listened to. And I have a friend that was actually going to come down here today and she couldn't show up because she got herself into such a state of anxiety thinking that she was going to come down here and talk to you guys that her blood pressure went up, so she had to stay home. It's really hard for people to come down here and talk to you guys about stuff. It's not normal for people to come down here and stand here and talk. So please listen to the community. We're never listened to. I can't think of even one thing that people have showed up for that's ever changed anything. Can we try that this time? Can we just maybe look again? There's always room to look again and to change things and send out another notice and say, we thought again. Otherwise, I mean, what are we going to do when things start going up in flames? That's all I want to say. Just please give it another try instead of just throwing this on people. There's a lot of people that have an issue with this. Please listen to the community, finally. Thank you.
Bill Wilsey, 2422 Seaport Drive. My family historically, I've been part of this valley since time immemorial, since this valley started. I've seen a lot of things in my life. I've traveled. I've lived the life of a rock star and got to go to LA and work and Denver, Colorado. And the last thing I want to do is turn my hometown into that, right? I already pay $6,000 a year for property taxes. Now I want to know who, I am here for blood. I want to know who can I hold accountable. I would love to see the timeline of events. I remember this happening. I'd like to see the timeline, who's responsible, decisions made, because I am not going to stop. This, to me, is the most hideous thing I've ever saw in my life. I shouldn't have to come home and hold the hands of the people that I elect to put into power to take care of me and my family and my future family. But that's all I have, and I really apologize having to come up here and say this, but I want to know who's going to be held accountable and stand up and take responsibilities for these actions. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill.
Hi, I'm Don Gephardt from 2510 Seaport Drive. In my past lives, I was a Class A water manager in the state of Washington, and I've also been one in the state of Nevada. When I saw this request that you hand water, and you're supposed to save water, this is the most inefficient way of watering you can come up with. If you just put timers, 10 minutes on a timer, and do it 3 times a week, it's far more efficient. You get a lot more good out of your water, and you don't have any runoff. But to have a handheld nozzle in your hand is extremely inefficient. Like I said, I'm from Nevada for 20 years now, and we water every other day. And on every Monday is a recovery day for the reservoirs. And they have water problems down there, but they don't allow anyone with a handheld hose anywhere around. If they see that, they actually will get a ticket. So, I mean, I don't know where that idea came from. I also have not heard from the water manager here in the city. Do you have a water manager? It's a federal law that you have one, but I haven't heard one word from them. Thank you.
Thank you, Don.
Brad Moore, 3425 Stringa Drive. I'm kind of with everybody here. I think we're all not very happy about this whole situation. I pay over $6,000 a year in property taxes, and I want results. This is ridiculous that this reservoir broke 4 months ago, and we don't have any information. We don't know what the plan is, and nothing's fixed. Why is it not fixed? It's not that hard. We just got to get some contracts put into place and get it fixed. If we have to put the courthouse on hold, put the courthouse on hold. Meanwhile, we're talking about putting in a city park that we don't need, and everybody's already been talking about this for quite a while, but we do not need a 100-acre city park at this point in time. This is unbelievable to me that I even have to come down here to voice my opinion, and I agree with everybody and everything that they've said so far. Anyway, that's all I got to say.
Thank you, Brad. You don't waste your opinion for being here. Thank you.
Thank you.
I don't really have anything to say, except that I've never seen anything where there is one person designated who it can't come to a vote, that he makes the decision for what happens and no one has a vote, and how, at least that's how it appeared in the newspaper, that he declared his position and he was the ultimate decider.
Can you introduce yourself for the record, please?
I am Nancy Huff, and I live at 212 Larkspur Lane. Mhm.
Thank you. Okay, yes, sir.
If I could just stand in place, I'd appreciate it.
Sure, just speak. You got a microphone right above your head there, and then just please reintroduce yourself one more time for the record. The floor is yours.
I'm Dave Bundy from 358 West Swallows View Drive, out in the Echo Hills area. It looks to me like, from what I'm hearing and what is going on with the council as far as restrictions, that if all these people in these different areas start losing all their shrubs and their trees because of this, and then we maybe have potential fire, and this is not a threat, I could see lawsuits coming all kinds of different ways that the city would have to deal with. I don't think it's worth it. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Jeff Jensen. I live at 2642 Seaport Drive. Just want to echo the feelings of most of the people here. It seems like most of us are from this neighborhood. There has to be an easier solution than just the hand watering thing. I understand that we have a crisis here and we're dealing with a crisis. And it doesn't really matter that I want to water this much or whatever. We've got to save some water. It does seem unworkable, though, to do the hand watering thing. Certainly, people are going to go on vacation during the summer, so there'll be no watering happening. Well, the yards are going to die off. At least with timers, perhaps there could be some sort of a restriction, even if it's only 1 day a week or 2 days a week or something like that, to where watering can happen. Certainly during the overnight hours where we have less evaporation, it's also more efficient because of that. We all know that when we're watering with a hose, we put a ½ inch of water over here and virtually none over here, and a little over here and a lot over there. It just doesn't really work very well. So I would urge you to reconsider that and come up with something that we can work with. I think the people are willing to work with the city on this, but it has to be workable. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Kathy Heinemeyer. I live at 3028 Mayfair Ridge. I really had no intention of saying anything, but I agree with all of the people who have spoken. I have just, over the last couple of years, spent over $10,000 redoing my grass and my landscaping. And it has, I am just beside myself because who's going to pay for this again? I mean, this is ridiculous. We have got to be able to keep the roots alive. Total restriction to me just doesn't make any sense. Can't we, like everybody has said, come up with a plan where we can at least keep the grass so that it doesn't die? I mean, I don't want to go through this again. I've worked really hard getting this all redone, and it looks amazing right now, but I haven't even been able to sleep at night. And we've got to find another way to do this. I understand there's a problem, and I'm willing to do my share and do what we can, but we just, there's got to be somebody who knows how to make this work and in a way that is reasonable. Thanks.
Thank you, Kathy.
Thank you.
If no one else would like to offer comments, we have a couple of letters that were submitted to us. And the authors asked us to read those letters here at the meeting. So Tanya Brocky, Deputy City Clerk, please identify the source of the letters and read those into the record, please.
The first letter is from David Funke. I, amongst many other citizens, taxpayers, voters of Lewiston, Idaho, are not very pleased with you, the city of Lewiston. The Public Works, Water Systems Director, or whoever is directly responsible for the repairs, maintenance, i.e. prevention of said issues like what we witnessed in January of 2023. That flood, reservoir failure was preventable, and you all know it. I cannot fully place the blame on prior city councils or even the prior form of city government when we had an actual city manager. However, there was negligence over the years, so some of that blame rests on them as well as the department heads who are non-elected officials. What we, the people, are looking for is definitive answers to our questions, etc., regarding this water issue and more. So we're supposed to let our yards die and plants, etc. Then I would suggest that every property owned by the city, regardless of location, i.e. on city water or on Lloyd for irrigation purposes, be shut off. If we don't get to water, then neither do you. Also, mega discounts or refunds on our water bills for the remainder of this year until such a time that your repairs are fully made. Haven't we, the people of Lewiston, Idaho and Nez Perce County, been taxed enough? It's like Lewiston is becoming California. Seriously. Current city council, please do your job and vote no on many of the things that are costing we taxpayers more money. Ask we, the people, our input, and if needed, put it up for election on the ballots, but in words people can actually read and understand. Not this twisted version so as to trick people into voting for what you want and what your handlers want. Last but not least, you in fact work for we the voters and taxpayers. Remember that. We keep records of every single issue, etc., voted on by you, the council, mayor, etc., and we will in fact be voting accordingly. Either represent us well or step down from office. Thank you for your time. The next letter is from Ryan Pugh, one of the pastors at River City Church in Lewiston. I was made aware of the impending water restrictions by a business owner who takes care of our lawn. The owner attends our church. Just last summer, we were able to finish the landscaping along 8th Street after a long delay between our neighbors and the city. In the end, we lost quite a few trees and plants, but were able to get things looking good again, but definitely at a high cost. I'm not asking for the city to make an exception for us. However, is the city prepared to help cover the replacement costs for thousands of dollars of sod and plants when everything dies? We use generously donated money from our congregation to complete the project. Is the city going to help pay for the replacement? We also house a daycare/preschool that spends quite a bit of time playing outside in the grass. Are we expecting people to pay high childcare costs for their children to play in the dirt? I'm hoping for a solution. As a nonprofit organization, we don't have a large cushion of money to replace everything once the infrastructure is back in place for these city utilities. Will city insurance help cover these things? Thanks for your time. The last letter is from Connie Nasseri. Dear City Council, because of health reasons, I cannot attend today but wish to express my concerns. Please read my letter out loud. The water reservoir problem is all of our problem, and I want to do my responsible part. But I do not understand swimming pools and car washing being allowed on personal property while thousands of dollars of landscaping dies. I also do not understand the requirement of automatic shut-off hose nozzles, since I am able to reasonably time myself, and I doubt that there is enough of a supply of required hose nozzles in Lewiston. My other concerns are for senior citizens and persons with health conditions that cannot be outside in the heat, and others that are unable to clamp with their hands because of health issues. For seniors like myself, can we have a medical exemption to be able to use appropriate water devices, such as a soaker hose if we cannot be outside, and perhaps just a hose if we were unable to clamp the automatic nozzle? Thank you.
Okay, one last call for any citizens that would like to offer comments. It is not. If not, I'll close.
I got one more thing. I forgot. I was gonna say it. I got mad. I apologize for that. But are we gonna get a reduction in our property taxes based off the?
Would you please introduce yourself for the record again, and then, yeah.
3425 Stringer Drive. Are we gonna get a reduction in our property tax rates when, this continues on, that nobody has any kind of landscaping or anything in front of their house? I mean, this property tax thing is a really big issue for everybody in my neighborhood. I have several people that are selling their houses in our neighborhood because they can't afford the property tax rates. Literally, I'm not kidding. This has to stop. Let's get this reservoir fixed. Let's figure out a way to reduce our property taxes and take care of the issue at hand. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we'll move on then to the next agenda item, agenda item 4, discussion items. Please note that identifying an item as an action item does not require the city council to vote on that item. Item A is the airport presentation. We're going to have an update provided by Lewiston Airport Director Mike Isaacs on airport activities. Mike, welcome. Please introduce yourself for the record. Remember, there are some microphones above your head to speak loudly and clearly so those at home can hear you and those in the back of the room can hear you. The floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Councilors. It's been a couple of years since I brought a budget update to you. We've been fortunate to have some COVID relief funding to cover us for the last couple of years. So I wanted to give you a little overview of what has been happening for the last couple of years. We have a slideshow. Perfect. Okay. So the organizational chart, we have two city councilors, or two city commissioners that are appointed by the city council. We have Katie Seekins and Lori Wilson with us today. We also have Joe Gish at large position, and then we have two county commissioners, county appointed commission, airport commissioners of Joe Gish, or Gary Peters and Manderson Miles. The staff, we have 11 of us. There's 3 deputy directors under me. There's a deputy director of finance, one of operations, and one of maintenance. There's 6 airport firefighter operations and maintenance staff. There's 1 shuttle driver, customer service agent, and 1 custodian. We also have a vacant admin assistant position that's being covered by Sheila Bond, the deputy director of finance and administration. I just want a quick shout out to my staff. We also have a dog on there, as you see, very effective at wildlife control. But this is most of the team here that run the airport. And I'm going to go through a few things that they do with their This is the best team I've ever had in 24 years. So what goes on at the airport? Well, we have the ARF station, of course. We have FAA regulates literally everything that we do. They tell us how high to mow the grass and what have you. We plow snow, we make the runways safe. In security, we have the TSA security. In addition to all the FAA and TSA requirements, we also do shuttle service. You'll see Washington State University and U of I. Those are two colleges that we actually drive up and get our customers on demand with 24-hour notice. So we found out we were getting requests weekly of students that needed a way to get down to get on our air carriers. They don't have cars. Almost 70% of those students didn't have a car. There was no transportation for them. So we received donated vehicles, and we had the first year done it in-house, and it was so successful, we have a dedicated person now for these shuttles. That, like I said, go on demand. So in addition to that, we have a cafe in the terminal building. It's currently a convenience store. We provide to-go items and coffee and what have you there. So that's also done in-house with the same staff. There's hundreds of acres of mowing. There's 96 football fields worth of asphalt to plow. There's the facility maintenance. Our terminal's remodeled in 1995, so there's quite a few eye-openers. Our water cooling tower was replaced a couple of years ago, and of course, it's having problems again this year, so we're being creative to get it fixed and keep the coolness on. So we manage some of the old and new buildings. Here's a couple slides I want to show of accomplishments that we've done over the years. In the last 3 years, as we know that we had United Airlines come in, and that was very successful and continues to be. We also have the cruise ship industry really taking over the air service and the terminal building. We have 80 people on a flight on one day. Like this morning was another return. We have people getting off the ship at 8 o'clock so they can reload the ship with new passengers to take them back to Portland on the cruise. Well, we have 80 people that are milling around in the terminal building for 4 hours, so that's why it was necessary to have coffee. And we have this waiting area that the airport board decided to remodel the old map travel. You see there's chairs that were donated by American Cruise Lines and other businesses in town to give these folks a place to rest for 4 hours as they wait for their connecting flights. I wanted to back up on our admin side. I wanted to explain what we do for the administration side of the house. There's just Sheila Bond, the Deputy Director of Finance, and myself. And we take care of all the financial and the human resources with us, all the hiring paperwork, the tax documents, the Idaho labor laws, safety, training, insurance. We have over 100 leases that we manage. They're all on varying schedules and rates that they have to keep up to date. All of them have been thoroughly reviewed and are up to date now. We have a really complex grant funding system that we track, and it takes up a lot of effort and time. These grants come in, they award money, and it takes multiple years, 2 to 4 years, before the project is done and closed out and the money is finalized. So that's kind of what we do on our end. We also do the social media and website maintenance, IT, marketing, and the project planning that I was speaking of. Some of the other accomplishments, this is big news for us. On the right side, you'll see a taxi lane that is being installed. The last of the paving should be completed tomorrow. This is going to be a project on the south side of the airfield that's going to have room for 20 hangars that are all ready to build. If you recall, there was an apron that was built about 15 years ago on the south side. We didn't have infrastructure put in there. It was not grant eligible, and there it sat. That's hard rock, basalt, trenching and blasting in the utilities to get the gas and the water was astronomically expensive. We took the remaining of our grant money to go through and make these lots build ready with their infrastructures put in. The paving will be completed tomorrow. We have several people interested in building already. We intend to, with the board's direction, recoup some of the $1 million of infrastructure that was put in there that was not eligible for grant money. So we're looking to get some of that, recapture some of those investments that the board and the city and the county has made in that area. That's going to bring in 20 new hangars. There's one hangar in there already. These are from 60 by 60 to 120 by 120. So we have room for very big operations, down to a pilot with one airplane all the way up to a corporation. And we'll be ready for all of it. It's designed for large aircraft and medium aircraft. So we'll have the ability to handle whatever comes our way. So who benefits from the airport? Here's a few labels, titles that you'll see. The top right picture is Nez Perce Tribe on the cruise ship last night. That was christened by Nez Perce Tribe Tourism. They actually did the christening last night on that American Jazz from American Cruise Lines. But we have every citizen in the region benefits, whether they fly or not. The cargo is just insanely like Christmas every day. You need a part overnight, it comes through the airport. You need a specialized doctor to fly in, that happens every day at the airport. You need emergency care, Life Flight has 2 aircraft now. They have a helicopter and a fixed wing that are based here. They brought in the fixed wing last year. So we have emergency care that's phenomenal in the region. We have agricultural, ag spraying businesses, several on the field. Is your land on fire? We have Helitac, Idaho Lands. They have spray plane. 2 years ago when the fires were here, it was absolutely nuts. We had helicopters and spray planes all over for fire suppression. So that's a good base for that. Gustin Aviation is one of the only 2 ag plane companies in the nation that repair total airframe on ag spray planes. So that's pretty rare with 1 on 2. That happens right here at Lewiston Airport. Here's a fun fact. Golfing and airplanes, where else can you fly in and have a golf cart waiting for you? So in the shoulder seasons of our wonderful weather we have here, you can fly in and have a golf cart waiting for you. We get a lot of travelers from up north where it's snowy. So that's kind of nice. I mentioned the cruise lines passengers. Just quick math on that. They've spent over $100 million a year on this. The cruise ship passengers are very, very substantially invested in this area. We generate, now that we have United Airlines here with Delta Airlines, both the cruise ships are using the airlines predominantly here first, and overflow moves north because we have our connections to the east now. So it's really exciting to see those, like I mentioned, 80 customers that come through. Every third day is when this happens. So it happens a lot. And it's just fun to see these folks come in with, and most of them are distinguished, well-traveled travelers. So they're great customers. And this is the first and last thing they see of our community is through the airport. So we strive hard to make that nice. At the center of it all, without question, is the commercial air service. It's essential as plumbing. You know, we talked about infrastructure here this morning, and airlines, air service is just as critical. Without it, cities don't grow, and with it, they do. So it is really a simple formula. So what's this worth? What's the airport worth? What do we bring in? How much money does it generate? Well, in 2020, the state of Idaho did an economic impact study. Lewiston generates 530 jobs. It earns $20 million. It has a $38 million gross domestic product with a $73.5 million total output. Those are direct numbers. Those aren't regurgitated, recycled money running through various businesses. That's actual real. And that's 2020 numbers based on 2018. So it's fairly outdated. And I would say that if you look at this timeline at the bottom, you'll see that schedule there. We've grew about 50% in our economic development in the last 10 years. So we're doing the right thing here at the. So where do we sit for the budget? This year is our current fiscal year is 22-23. It starts October 1. Our revenue is $930,000. Our expenses are $1,758,000 with a shortfall of $827,000. The three-year average shortfall between the revenue and expenses has been $828,000, so we're right in that ballpark. The board just did a study, worked on a work session here last Monday, and it looks like it's gonna be closer to $800,000 this year, so it'll be a little less than average. But as you can see, when the FAA regulates virtually everything, you have a lot of rules to comply with, and it costs, and security and safety with FAA. On the capital side of things, the FAA has entitlement money that we get. It's $1 million a year because we have our commercial travelers fly out. They have doubled that number. Now it's just a little over $2 million for 5 years. It's called bipartisan infrastructure law. We're in year 2 of it. What that did is that threw a bunch of money on projects, so we thought, yay, we're gonna get caught up. Well, projects went from $100 a ton for asphalt to $200 a ton for asphalt. So our buying power shrunk quite a bit. Yes, we're gaining, but it's a nationwide issue where they dumped a whole bunch of this bipartisan law in there. So we have $2 million of our of AIP and BIL, they call it, money. And then, as I mentioned, we put a little over $1 million into local capital ourselves to get this South Hack taxi lane area ready to go. This does not include the subsidy that was given to United Airlines. As you know, that to land an airline, to even get a seat at their table is not a given. In this day and climate, it's really hard to get to keep your air service, much less get anything else. So it takes consultants that really can show really give us the best presentation for our community over several dozens of other like-sized ones that are struggling for it as well. Having said that, it is common practice now for smaller airports to have to pay for their air service. It's happening everywhere, including Pullman with the Boise route. So if you want to have air service in your community, if you want to have the $73 million economic impact, a large portion of that is through commercial, we have to be prepared to think about how we can keep that infrastructure, that economic benefit coming into the community. The board is going to they instructed me that we're having a work session on May 11th. We have until May 15th to get you an actual preliminary budget, so they'll have that before that time. But I wanted to give you these numbers here of what we currently have been doing, so it gives you kind of an expectation of what's coming. Next year's project is, these federal projects are set in motion through a 5-year capital plan. And by the year prior, you're committed to do these because it takes an awful lot of planning on the federal side to get the money programmed for these projects. So this next coming year, the taxiway A is our primary taxiway. It's the full parallel to our commercial runway, and that has to be rehabilitated. There's a little piece that has to be reconstructed. We also are going to get a piece of snow removal equipment. That's eligible for grant. It's a loader with a snowblower. We don't have a snowblower. So when you get more than 4 inches of snow and our runway lights are 12 inches high off the ground, you're in kind of a pickle trying to get the snow over there. So this is going to help relieve a couple safety issues for us. A terminal study is another thing I mentioned. Our building's remodeled in 1995, built in 1960. So does it make sense with today's day and age? There's another batch of terminal infrastructure money, terminal building infrastructure money that we could tap into. So this study will tell us, what does it look like for building this building, remodeling it again, or building a new one, or do we need anything? Certainly, we can all agree that it has changed over the last 20 years since TSA came to be. They were 20 years ago, last October when they started up, so. That's what I have for you today. With that, I answer any questions.
Thank you, Director. Councilors? Councilor Lidke?
So I've been reading a lot on airports. I like to fly, would really like to fly more out of Lewiston. I was set to fly out in February and had to cancel that trip. But it was nice that I could not put my family up to driving me 45 miles or longer to get on a flight. And with that, I've, followed the state legislature. And I know that we've talked about being able to supplement term for it. Idaho currently doesn't have a law that allows us to use taxpayer dollars, which nobody wants to have to be able to do that, obviously, but I have seen that Twin Falls and Pocatello is on the verge. Idaho Falls lost their Boise flight. How hard of a fight are we going to have to keep two airlines here as far as your projections?
As we mentioned, Commissioner Peters mentioned at the christening last night, it really helps to have the cruise ships back us up with such a large amount of demand. Like I mentioned, our first class service, those seats are available. Some of the other accomplishments I didn't mention is Delta, now they upgauge to a 76-seat plane with 3-class service. So when you start filling those business class, that's where the profit is made for the airlines. So we have their ear, so do a lot of other airports, but I think we have a couple other aces in our hand that are pretty valuable for us. Having said that, I think there's no question that with the climate of fuel prices and the astronomical price, when I was learning to fly in the 80s, it was $12,000 a year. 20 years later, in the 2000s, it was $18,000 a year that for the first year. If you want to be a commercial pilot and you want to build time, it was $18,000 a year. That is like starvation. Now, starting is $92,000, and they have tuition forgiveness. So there's all these extra costs that are coming on the airlines. Where does that put us? Probably with a subsidy.
Councilor Lidke?
And I, first of all, before I go further, I apologize for being tardy. I was able to tune in and listen to the citizen comments, and I just appreciate that people showed up to use their voice today. But to connect it to long-term decision-making and property taxes. I live in the flight path of the airport. I actually very much enjoy it. I am a fan of flying, and I've noticed that we get a lot of different aircraft, and when we talk about building our tax base and being welcome to businesses, and there's a long history of Schweitzer having conversations with Lewiston and other businesses. If we are not able to keep flights, in your expert opinion as a airport manager, what does that do to our ability to attract business if we were to lose our airport?
Yeah, I've heard it from doctors that were considering to fly, to consider to move. And if you don't have connections where their family, they're international travelers, they like to travel around the world, and they're not willing to drive up in the wintertime to fly out. I think the level of services that we're going to get in the community are certainly going to fall without commercial air service, without question. And to attract new businesses, it's just common practice that you have to have air service for them to consider serious business anyways.
Especially with no freeway.
Correct. And sketchy roads in the wintertime.
Director, before I call on one of the other council members, please remember to speak up loudly and clearly. There's folks listening at home that want to hear what you have to say. Councilor Forsman.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm hearing that we're having a hard time just keeping the two as is. Cause then I know that's part of the cost of why tickets to get out of Lewiston are at such a high cost. So there's a lot of people that can't use the Lewiston airport because they just can't afford to fly out of here. So we would see that to go down if we were able to get more airlines to come into the Lewiston airport. Do I have my understanding correct?
If I understand what you're saying, when we have one airline, there's no competition, the prices are high. And when United came in, competition leveled it off where it's more competitive. I think as we build more routes, there's absolutely no way that we could get more than 2 air carriers to operate out of Lewiston. We get more routes with those air carriers, but we're the smallest city in the nation that has 2 legacy air carriers operating. It's very rare to have that. We can fly internationally on both of those. So have that ability, your prices, your opportunities. We're talking about getting the morning flight back instead of the noon flight. That's all operational issues with airlines. They don't have pilots. That's why they're raising their prices on their salary. So once we keep that, you have more opportunities, absolutely.
Councilor?
I'm done, thank you.
Councilor Spicklemeyer?
My question was answered.
Councilor Townsley?
You mentioned the one thing, I mean, I am so grateful that we have an airport here, and I appreciate that we have 2 large airlines. But I've found that because of the so-called upgrade, which I still have yet to see, of Delta with a bigger plane, which means you get more business class, who seem to only be interested in flying to Salt Lake. While the rest of us who fly in steerage, because of that flight, we don't get there until afternoon, and then any connectors, we've got a day shot for travel. And I hope we can get that morning flight back. And when I used to fly that down to Boise, I said every 4th grade student in our school district, I'd love for them to see that early morning flight down to Boise, because they get to see just about the whole state. Talk about a good geography lesson. And now it's an afternoon flight, and travel is shot once you get there. It forces you to spend the night in Salt Lake, which I have nothing against Salt Lake. I used to live there, but that's not where I want to end up. Thanks.
Well, councilors, I just pulled up a round trip ticket in September, Lewiston to Boston for $800. That's not too bad. Leave here at 1:30 in the afternoon, get there 11:30 at night. It's just when things are getting started there, so that's a pretty good schedule. Director, I have a quick question. Maybe it's more of a comment, but I'd like to hear your input on it, because sometimes it's easy for us to maybe get a little bit disconnected. How does the airport connect to the rest of what we do here in the community? And I attended the christening last night with you and others, and that was a very wonderful event. And one of the comments that was shared there was this whole notion about the uniqueness of Lewiston having an airport right next to a turnaround for a world leader in cruising. And not only that, the American Cruise Lines, for example, spends a lot of time and money marketing Lewiston to international customers. We don't think about that. But they put all kinds of information out and they market Lewiston. Come to Lewiston, Idaho, get on a boat and travel where Lewis and Clark went. And that brings, I would imagine, a lot of benefit to our community and to the airport.
I agree. It's hard to quantify what that benefit is. It's just fun to see these folks coming in by the droves that want to follow that Lewis Clark Trail. And it's $5,000 a person to take a tour, minimum. So they're affluent people. There's definitely the right type of people that we want to showcase our community with. And we have their time for 4 hours. let's show them our vineyards. Let's show them all the beauty that we have. They take helicopter tours and other things around the valley. The jet boat tours are part of it as well. So yeah, it's international. You mentioned they advertise internationally.
But then if they weren't able to fly in and out of Lewiston, what does that mean?
Well, it means they come from Spokane and Pullman. And we, right now, with 80 people on the plane, we have two planes, one's 76-seater, one's a 50-seater. I would say, when those cruise ships come in, if you notice high ticket prices, it's probably on a cruise day where they come in and they take all the seats or half the seats or most of them anyway. So that's what we're seeing with the cruise industry. But we know with our partnership, I would say a partnership, just working relationship with the cruise lines by remodeling a little section of the building for them and just being partners with them because their customers are our customers. We all win. The hotel, 5,000 new hotel rooms come in because of them. That's pretty significant. Without air service here, we lose a lot of that opportunity to recapture their money.
Director, would it be okay if I see if one of the board members would like to share work with us? We don't see them very often.
Please.
Put them on the spot, maybe, I don't know.
We have a couple with us. Would anyone like to? Joe Gish is with us here today. He's been really helpful with our budget and has got a lot of aviation background.
Okay, well, hey, thanks for letting me speak. I'm the at-large member. I've been there for a few months, and Katie nominated me for treasurer, so now I'm looking over the money. We've got Sheila Bond, who is looking at, working our books. She's doing a fantastic job. We're going through some of the kind of legacy issues with QuickBooks and starting to rearrange our charge lines for the budget. And when we do this final adjustment, I think we're going to have an extremely good handle on the budget, what we've spent, and then that will transfer into a very accurate budget for next year, and we're going to get it to all of you on time. So my expectation for the budget as my role as treasurer at the airport is that you're going to get it on time, and the preliminary budget's going to be very close. And then I think it's in August, we give the final budget to you, but we'll have good numbers for you. And just on a personal note, from being on the board before and being on the board now, the airport is it's running like a Swiss watch. It's transparent, and I feel, with the airport director's leadership, they've got projects going on, probably 6 projects going on simultaneously all the time. It's a huge amount of administrative work for him to track all that stuff, all the grant money. I'm just now starting to understand how the grant money flows in, how it gets reimbursed. Sometimes the last 10% doesn't come until years after you start the project because that's the way the federal government doles out money. But, things are getting done, and there are a lot of neat ideas. We were thinking about grass runway because a lot of the backcountry pilots want to land on grass with their big, bush tires. One guy told me it cost them $40 in rubber every time they land on a asphalt runway. I have a thing where I'd like to get our big commercial runway lengthened. I think that's several years out, but when that happens, then we'll get the big firefighting type aircraft in. But what's neat is that when I was on the airport board before, we were never talking about these big projects and the what ifs. What if we could do this, and where would that take the airport? And so I'm extremely pleased. It's a joy to go to the meetings every month, and it's I think that when we look at the airport 5 years from now, it's just going to be amazing what we'll accomplish between now and then. So that's it for me. Any questions?
Thank you, Joe. Councilors? Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Katie, welcome.
Thank you.
Please introduce yourself for the record. The floor is yours.
Katie Seekins, I am Airport Board Commissioner. This is the end of my third year, so I'm up for re-election here, or reappointment, I guess you would say, here this, and I think your next council meeting. But a couple of the items I think that it would be great for you guys to know what we're doing behind the scenes of what we're trying to do on growing the airport. We've obviously got the south side working, so hangars inside the airport, add more business, add more revenue, more property tax, that piece. But on the outside has been my focus, and primarily Hathaway Park. It used to be a park that the city leased from the airport, and now they, a few years back, stopped leasing it from the airport. So I've been actively looking to try to get a hotel placed there. So been in the works for about a year now, so still in the process. I don't have any great prospects of investors at this point, but it's definitely something I'm focused on. And the other piece is getting a restaurant up there. You've got, I think the last number I heard was 18,000 cars go up Brighton Canyon every single day. And so that, I mean, it's a great piece also for growth of the orchards, to be able to get some more business up that piece of it. So, and then just to echo your opinion, I'm an avid traveler as well, so I know that it's hard to get out of Lewiston and it's painful and to get anywhere. And we feel that at the airport, unfortunately, some of that is not within our control. But I have to say, Mike and our liaison that we hire are working very hard to get more flights. That would rectify some of those issues, not only getting out early, but even being able to get home same day. So I feel your pain there as well. So anyhow, I just wanted to give a little short spiel for me because I'm not down here very often, but I am your city representative. So if you have anything, feel free to call, text, email, any of it. I'm available anytime. So.
Thank you, Jay.
Yep.
Gonna pass, Miss Lori?
At least introduce myself, I guess.
Please introduce yourself for the record.
I'm Lori Wilson, and I am also one of your city-appointed representatives on the airport board, and love doing it, so thank you for the opportunity. My passion in getting on the board originally was tourism and economic development. I always had wanted to be the one that can help kind of just keep things moving along with people coming into the valley and what they can see and do. And I loved that so much that now that we talked about the cruise lines, I actually went to work for American Cruise Lines. So I wanted to even more help with all of these guests that come to the valley. I wanted to get them shopping downtown, and I want to get them to our vineyards, and I want to get them golfing. I want to just kind of bring all of that together. So I love that being a part of the air service and the cruise lines and whatever I can do to help with that. So, and again, thank you for the opportunity to be here and to be a part of the board. And yeah, if you have any questions, I'm happy to help.
Councilor Lidke?
Not necessarily a question, I won't put you on the spot, Lori.
okay.
But I do want to say that I haven't spoke much about the airport in meetings, so I do appreciate the presentation. But I will say that when I'm at the meetings, I really appreciate that it's an active board, not a rubber stamp. I've even seen a difference of opinion and a debate, which doesn't always happen these days, I think, within public meetings. And I feel like that's a true test to every one of the members' passion about what we can do to really push our city forward.
Yeah.
None of us are in a very fun spot, and I have been impressed with, no offense to Mr. Gish, but our city representatives, that you guys have taken the bull by the horns, asked the hard questions, pulled back on the budget. I just want to say thank you. I've been very appreciative of that.
Thank you. And you're absolutely right. I mean, I think what's been so great about all of us being on it is that we all really do have something different that we do want to bring to it. And as they're talking about all the budgets and everything, and that's definitely not my strength at all, and I never made any bones about it. But if you want to talk tourism and you want to talk all of that, I could go on for days. So, and we do. We all bring something different, and we all get along, and it's just been super easy and super fun. Super. Thank you. Thank you.
Mike, thank you for being here along with your board members. We appreciate what you do for the valley and for your service. And we know we'll have a couple more opportunities to work with you between now and the time we get down to the brass tacks on things. So,
Very good.
all right, thank you.
Thanks for the
Thank you very
opportunity.
much. Okay, councilors, next up, we have item B, Community Development Block Grant, CDBG, overview of the 2023-2027 Consolidated Plan, 2023 Action Plan, and the analysis of impediments to fair housing choice. We have Ms. Dawn Ortiz with us today. Dawn, if you'd please introduce yourself for the record, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor and City Council members. My name is Dawn Ortiz, and I'm the city's Community Development Specialist. Today, we're going to be presenting and mostly providing information on the Community Development Block Grants 2023 to 2027 Consolidated Plan, the 2023 Action Plan, and the analysis of impediments. These three documents are a requirement of the annual HUD funding the city receives as CDBG Entitlement City. They also provide the needs and goals for the community specified by the citizens for the next year and the next 5 years. The city hired Mosaic Community Planning to draft these plans, and I have Jessica Fish from Mosaic here today who will be presenting them shortly. There are no actions needed today from the council. These plans will go for a 30-day comment period until June 12th. It is at that city council meeting that these plans and the recommended changes to the existing home repair and micro enterprise programs will need official consideration. And with that, I'm going to hand it off to Jessica.
Welcome, Jessica. If you could please introduce yourself for the record and remember to speak up loudly and clearly. The floor is yours. Thank you.
Jessica Fish, Mosaic Community Planning. I would switch slides.
Yeah, I think she yelled.
Oh, okay, got it. All right. Thank you all for having me. Mosaic has been working with the city since last fall on these plans, and we're very excited to be at the point of presenting them to you and soon to be uploading the drafts to the website and have those available for public comment as well. I'd get feedback from everyone. So two of the plans that we're talking about today are the 2023 to 2027 Consolidated Plan and the Annual Action Plan for this year. These plans are focused on identifying and prioritizing community development and housing needs in Lewiston, and they are serving as the city's application for the Community Development Block Grant or CDBG program. So the 5-year Consolidated Plan is kind of that broader plan that develops broader goals for the city to focus on over 5 years, while the Annual Action Plan details the specific projects that the city will be funding for the 2023 program year. So in addition to looking at data on housing and community development in Lewiston, getting the insight of residents and stakeholders was really a vital part in developing these plans. Some of our community engagement, you can see here, we had the project website, lewistonidconplan.com, which is where all of the information about these plans has been posted, meeting dates, our community survey. The draft plans will be uploaded there as well for public comment. You'll be able to submit comments on them over the comment period dates. As I mentioned, we had the survey hosted there. Community workshops, we held an in-person community workshop as well as a virtual workshop in the winter of this year. Stakeholder interviews and a resident focus group with staff and clients at the YWCA as well. Community engagement for the plans took place primarily in January and February of this year. And we will have the draft consolidated plan and annual action plan and analysis of impediments available for public comment from May 8th to June 13th, 2023 at the project website, and will also be available at the Community Development Department for anyone wanting to access it in person as well. And then the plan will be resident feedback will be incorporated into the plans following the public comment period, and they will be ready for council approval in June. So just a little bit about the Community Development Block Grant Program. The focus of these funds is developing communities through supporting decent housing, a suitable living environment, and expanding economic opportunity in the city, with the goal of resulting in benefiting people with lower moderate incomes, preventing or eliminating slum or blight in the community, or meeting an urgent need, such as in the case of a natural disaster. Community Development Block Grant funding can be used for a wide array of activities. Since it's a block grant, things like housing and property activities like housing rehabilitation, can also fund public facilities or improvements to existing facilities like parks or community centers, public services like assistance to residents experiencing homelessness, or senior services, youth activities, things like that. Economic development activities, funding to nonprofit organizations who are already doing this sort of work in the community, and then planning and administration of the Community Development Block Grant Program. So an overview of the 2023 to 2027 goals and anticipated resources. The city will receive about $242,000 for the 2023 program year, and an estimated amount of funding over the upcoming 5 years, including year one, is about $1.1 million. The consolidated plan details the city's goals and amounts planned to be devoted to each of these goals over the 5 years. And so here you can see the largest funding areas and are providing housing and services for people experiencing homelessness and improving housing access and quality. These are the planned projects for 2023. Home repair program at $100,000. Improvements to public facilities and infrastructure, such as installation of a new water line in Normal Hill, improving ADA access to sidewalks in lower moderate income areas, or improving ADA access to City Hall, things like assisting with transit or homelessness activities, and then some specific public services programs, the Interlink Home Safety Program, and Willow Grief Peer Support Groups and Resources, and then overall program and administration of the Community Development Block Grant Program and lead-based paint training. The second plan that we're here to talk about is the analysis of impediments to fair housing choice, which assesses equal access to housing as set forth in the Civil Rights and Fair Housing Acts, which focus on protecting a person's right to own, sell, purchase, or rent housing of their choice without fear of unlawful discrimination. So in addition to combating discrimination, recipients of HUD funds are required to take meaningful actions that overcome patterns of segregation in the community and foster inclusive communities that are free from barriers restricting access to opportunity based on protected class. And you can see the different protected characteristics here. So the analysis of impediments to fair housing choice will include an analysis of the local fair housing landscape, and that includes things like past fair housing litigation, resources around fair housing in the community that are available. And it also looks at 4 specific fair housing issues. So integration and segregation. Are people in the community segregated in where they live by things like race and ethnicity, national origin, those different protected classes? Areas of poverty, so is poverty kind of clustered in certain areas of the city, and how does that overlap with issues of integration and segregation? Access to opportunity, so that's, does everyone in the community have access to resources that you need every day? Things like education, employment, access to grocery stores, parks, things like that. And then it also look at housing needs. That's looking at things like housing cost burden. Are people spending more than 30%, more than 50% of their income on housing costs? And also look at things like overcrowding and housing quality as well. And then finally, the study will develop fair housing priorities and goals to address fair housing issues in Lewiston. So this is just an example of the sort of mapping and analysis that we did in the plan of issues like segregation and integration. We'll map patterns by race and ethnicity, national origin, limited English proficiency, and disability as well. And you can, as much as you can see from this map here, there's not really strong patterns of racial and ethnic segregation in Lewiston. So we go over all of that in the plan. We'll also be mapping factors like access to opportunity, so that just showing different areas of the community where there's greater need for access to education, employment, transportation, things like a healthy environment. This example map shows areas with the best access to parks in the community and areas that are designated as high park need by the Trust for Public Land, just as an example of the type of these resources maps that we did, and then low poverty neighborhoods as well. So these plans will be available for public comment from May 8th through June 13th at the project website, lewistonidconplan.com. You can also email us directly, info@mosaiccommunityplanning.com, but there's a comment form on the website where you can submit your comments there as well. And we should have formatted executive summaries of them too that are kind of just a shorter version that a little less dense if you're looking for that too. But I really appreciate you all's attention today, and I look forward to getting your feedback. I'd love to answer any questions or hear your comments today as well.
Councilors? Councilor Spickemeyer?
Thank you, Mayor. I did have a question. When you were going over all the projects and at the bottom, the program administration fees, could you explain what that program administration, what that consists of?
So program administration fees, they help, a great example is we do home rehabilitation, and one of HUD requirements is I have to do lead-based testing. And I have to have someone come down and do that for each home that I do, and that can range anywhere from $1,000 up to $3,000 just per home. And then it also helps with any training that I have to attend. It assists with, I am hopefully this year going to actually train in-house. So maybe one of our inspectors or our building official can actually do that testing for us. And then that would help keep their education up and provide the utensils or the tools that they need to do that testing.
Welcome.
Councilor Forsman?
With having someone on the staff, city staff that knows how to do that, would you see a cost savings there?
Absolutely.
I have a quick question. Same page. On the assisting with homelessness activities, can you give me an example of that? Because I know there's been questions over the last year about how we, as a city council, have helped or not helped
That is,
homelessness activities, but I think it's always been part of the plan.
it's always been part of the plan, and I'm still trying to find that. I still wanted it included in the plan because it is one of the biggest things that everybody talked about from the citizens. And so if that need arised, I would be able to act on it. It's just getting that idea or moving that project or activity forward and finding it.
So as a city, we are doing something. We have funds available, resources available. We're just looking for an opportunity.
I'm looking for that opportunity. I thought about maybe reaching out to maybe some of the bigger cities to see what they do, just to try and get a hold of someone to try and find something. But I have it. I just need that person to come to here.
Councilor Spickelmeyer?
Thank you, Mayor. One other question. You mentioned that there will be, open for public comment. So how will that information go out that it's available or that you're wanting comments? How will people know?
I put a notice in the newspaper. It'll go out on Sunday. And then we also post online the website. And then I post online on social media. And then I have emails that I send out to a lot of the anybody and everybody. So I try to do it social media wise. Seems to be the best result.
And that said, Dawn, how many responses do you typically receive?
0.
0. So as a council, we can help spread the word and get folks involved in this so that we're not sitting here in 6 months or a year from now and taking criticism because we don't do anything. We've got some activities there. We have some support available. So, the public needs to avail themselves of that, but we are trying to address some of these issues and concerns. And Jessica and Dawn and Tanya before Dawn, have worked hard at this. So anyway, it's just good to know that if we're not hearing from anybody, whether we can change some things, and it would really be no different than some of our good citizens that showed up today to talk to us about some of these other issues. How can we improve our communications with the public? So, thank you. Councilor Townsley?
I'm not sure if this is the appropriate time to.
Okay, do you want to pass?
I'm going to pass.
Okay, we'll pass. All right. Well, thank you, Dawn and Jessica, for being here today. Appreciate it very much.
Thank you.
Councilors, next up, we've got item C, ordinance 4882, stormwater drainage system. We have our Public Works Director, Dustin Johnson, here with us today, and he may have some other staff with him to introduce when the time is appropriate. But Director, if you'd please introduce yourself for the record. Remember to speak up loudly and clearly. The floor is yours. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Dustin Johnson, Public Works Director, here to speak to you about stormwater. So in the interest of time, we will get rolling as expeditiously as we can. So today, being as a work session, I'm gonna outline kind of some general progress. I think I try and do this every time we discuss stormwater. Just generally, it has been a slow-moving process to get to where we're at today, and it will continue to be a slow-moving process to get to where we go tomorrow. So I tend to include information that you may have already seen it. I can guarantee you will recognize some of these slides in here, but I think it's important to reinstill what we've covered, why we're here, and make sure that we're unified in the direction that we're moving forward. Specifically today, we're here to talk about the ordinance, so I'll go into further detail what the stormwater ordinance is and what it isn't, and why that is essentially the next step of the process that we will be discussing. Again, you probably have seen this slide, just a general overview of what we have done to date. So I'm going to do my best to boil down as much of our acronyms as I can. MS4, Municipal Separate Storm Sewer System, that's a acronym that's been floating around for a couple decades now. For various reasons, all the way up to Washington, D.C., to Boise, to Little Lewiston, Idaho, it took several decades to get our MS4 permit issued, and that is basically that is the large federal requirement that we manage our stormwater system. The other acronym that goes with that is Phase 2. So you'll hear maybe that hand in hand with MS4 and Phase 2. Phase 1, which rolled out kind of soon after the Clean Water Act of 1972, was a requirement for larger municipalities to handle their stormwater. And as that finally kind of got better regulated. They've rolled into phase 2, which is the smaller municipalities, which include Lewiston. So that is why we are discussing this today, all directly correlated to the Clean Water Act of 1972. And so it took whatever that is, 50 years to get to where we are here today, but this is a federal requirement based off of the original Clean Water Act. Well, it won't take me that long to get to all these bullet points. Next, we discussed the master plan. And so we knew this MS4 permit was coming, and unfortunately, we did not know COVID was coming. So a lot of these documents that we're discussing, the master plan, the user rate fee study, those were done pre-COVID, but we kind of shelved all of this because we couldn't have public outreach, public meetings, couldn't get out into the public to discuss this stuff. So once we started opening back up, that's when we started having these discussions again. So I'm losing my dates, but there was a bridge between the old city council and the current city council, but more or less the council adopted the stormwater master plan, the user fee, and then we started talking about what this meant moving forward. And so we August last summer, we rolled out kind of our draft stormwater utility rates and discussing levels of service. This is what you get for this cost, this is what you get for this cost, and kind of outlining, in order for this to pay for itself, you got to meet a certain dollar amount and why that's important. At that point, last fall, we started talking to the large impacted public agencies, specifically the port, the school district, LCSC, and a couple more that we went out there that were going to be impacted by this. January of this year, we had a work session right in here, and staff was given direction to move forward with the full stormwater rate that was recommended within that rate study that was previously adopted. So here we are today, May of 2023, and we're here to talk about the stormwater drainage ordinance. So it's a bit of a challenge for me I try and keep my information engaging and exciting, try and show visual pictures and graphs and charts, but there's not a lot to show you on a 17-page ordinance. A lot of legal language and not a lot of pictures. So I guess I will just kind of go through as best I can and talk about what the ordinance does. What is it? So it is essentially the document that will create the stormwater utility. It outlines why we're creating it, the federal and state requirements that dictate the stormwater utility, or at least the management of the stormwater, which would necessitate funding that, which would then create a stormwater utility. I think I've already talked about why now, and then I'll get into further details. So the first 6 pages are basically, as in any ordinance, the title, the purpose, compliance requirements, as I talked about, and there's also a unique factor in here that previously the city of Lewiston was taken all the way to the state Supreme Court based off of a previous stormwater utility, and the Supreme Court found it as a tax. And this current one identifies why it is not a tax, that is a user fee or a utility. And so there is language in there that clearly identifies taking what was the findings of that case, some of the other cases that have been heard since then, and other utilities that have been created since then, and why this one is a user fee and not a tax. Then we go into definitions, specifically again, identifying all these wonderful acronyms that I throw out, and then creates a specific stormwater division. And so a lot of things that we talk about, so we will talk about water next, but water, sewer, and sanitation are all separate enterprise funds. And so each pot of money does not intermingle with other pots of money. And the same is true with creating a stormwater utility. Money generated within a stormwater utility stays within that stormwater utility, and its sole purpose is to stay within compliant within the MS4 permit and maintain the stormwater system. And so it's very clear in the roles and responsibilities that they're under the public works window or umbrella, but those fees that are generated within that utility stay within the purpose of that utility, which for this one is stormwater. It defines what a stormwater fee is, defines the use of the fees, the exemptions, the credits, and the appeals, defines what the stormwater funds, as I just said, the segregation of funds, and what those funds can be used for. Then closing out, it amends the codes to include stormwater as a utility, and defining utility charges and how delinquent payments are handled. So now I'm going to go back a little bit to kind of provide a little bit more context of what we've discussed before. Well, let me go back. That is what I have for the stormwater ordinance. If you want to discuss the ordinance, we can have questions specifically to the ordinance, page number, reference section, or I can proceed forward into where we're going from here. I guess I'll take a breath real quick and let the council decide how we want to proceed.
Councilor Spicklemeyer. Mayor, so Director, on, I guess it's 36-255, it talks about a new division. So the new division is more employees?
No. That segregates it creates a division, and we don't have, eventually we will have segregated employees that manage that stormwater, but the budget that we're rolling forward has no additional employees.
And so this coordinator says we have to assign a coordinator, so that's somebody within your department.
Yeah, we already have a stormwater, I don't see him here. He's not here. So we already have a stormwater coordinator, and that was filled last year.
Additional duty or whatever.
Yeah, well, we knew, because when the MS4 permit was issued to us, we needed somebody to administer that permit. So we hired that person, and that was filled with last year's budget. So next year's budget will draw off this utility. But the way we manage the funds, we can't take wastewater employees and pay wastewater rates to do stormwater responsibilities. We have to manage them very carefully. So what's unique about stormwater is integral to the street system. It's not integral to water or wastewater. Those are two separate utilities. But the street system, you've got your storm drains, you've got your catch basins, you've got your curb gutter and everything else that you're maintaining. So you may have, let's just say, a broken section of curb. Is that a street responsibility or is that a stormwater responsibility? And so that's where we can delineate and say, no, that is a stormwater responsibility because that's to manage this overflow, or it's a broken curb, we're gonna take care of it with this street project. So a lot of that stuff gets somewhat gray, but I wanna be clear that we're not creating more employees. We're not creating we're creating an own utility, but it's somewhat of its own side managed fund.
That was Councilor Spicklemeyer.
Go ahead.
And the other one was, when we go into this next session, are you gonna go through the user fee credits?
I don't think I have that specifically called out, but we can go into those details. What I'm talking about next is the two different drainage zones and then the rates that we discussed, but we can talk about the credits if you'd like.
That's for the, commercial.
Yep.
Yeah, maybe just a quick overview. Some of these I wasn't on when you went through on your list, like last January and stuff.
Okay, yeah. So there is a credit section in there it is specifically for commercial properties. So we did get one specific question from a property owner and from a residential development. And the way the ordinance is written in that, I'm trying to find the perfect analogy, but generally, if you are hydraulically connected to the system, we have to accommodate you. So let's say these standards that you improve your development to, if you build a house today, you're required to put some storm drainage improvements on your property. Is that to a 20-year event? 10?
It's under 8,100.
Okay, so it doesn't accommodate the full. Eventually, that system in a moderately sized storm will overtop, and then you'll be running into the public system. So we still have to maintain that public system. If you're hydraulically disconnected, say your house is in a giant hole, and there's no way for you to drain into our system, you would be exempt from the utility. Where commercial areas, I'm gonna pick on the mall. You have this massive parking lot with all kinds of impervious area and all that drainage. And so let's say the mall a new property owner comes, says, I'm gonna develop this mall and I wanna design this to a 50-year storm, so it will withhold all of that storm drainage runoff. So you're gonna get a credit because we don't have to design and maintain that system to such a high extent, because right now that mall will truck a lot of runoff into our system. And so that gives you kind of the context of the small residential units versus the commercial units. There's a few other unique credits in there because the MS4 permit, there's public education and outreach and a few other, I think there's six minimum control measures. One is public education. And so school districts typically get credits because they get participation in reaching out to school kids and, only rain down the drain and where your stormwater goes. And so oftentimes school districts will get credits for public education. So those are the other types of credits that are moved towards compliance within our own permit.
Okay, yeah, because I had several comments from taxpayers that they were hoping that these big parking lots would contribute a lot more of the contaminants than the homeowner would pay the burden of these fees.
Yep, and that's why that equivalent residential, ERU, equivalent residential units, so that's kind of the industry standard of basically assuming a house in normal hill, you're gonna have essentially what is a 1 ERU. Well, I don't even wanna guess what the mall or North 40, where they have such a massive parking lot, that's gonna be several ERUs. But if they go and they're proactive and they say, well, it's gonna be cheaper for me to build some retention ponds and some modern stormwater retention and detention facilities to lessen my bill, it makes our job easier in that we don't have to maintain such a large system to facilitate their runoff, and they get a certain credit on their account.
Councilor Forsman.
What is, if we say we just don't want to, we're not doing this, what happens to the city? I know it's federally.
Yep, so we don't have a choice as far as the federal permit. It's been issued and we've signed the dotted line, or I think the mayor may have signed the dotted line that we will comply with the permit and we don't have a choice. We have annual reports that we submit to the Idaho Department of Environmental Quality, and they check for compliance. And so a lot of these things, they have, it's a 5-year permit cycle, and so incrementally the requirements step up. And so it's adoption of new design standards, inspection of construction practices, maintenance of your existing system, that's street sweeping and making sure your pipes are clean, implementing new modern drainage systems, so it's, that you're not just cleaning out the old standards that don't really hold it. So all of that takes dollars to do all of that. Generally, if there is no utility account, it goes directly to a requirement of property taxes. So it will go before you in budget season, and we will say, here's the line items of costs that we have to spend to stay in compliant with the report or with the permit. Part of that is also the compliance. So yes, maintenance, but also there's a capital component. So when I talk about capital, that means large projects, large reconstruction projects that, I have more meetings than I want to regarding the storm drain underneath 21st Street. I had one today. The lines that are underneath 21st Street were essentially thrown down a gully and overfilled. And so now as you drive up 21st Street, essentially a good portion of all those properties are built on these old corrugated metal pipes that were built in anywhere from 1965 when the mall opened to late 80s, maybe in the 90s. The design life for corrugated metal is about 30 years. So you can do the math and see how long those pipes have been sitting there. And so it takes a lot of money now to go back and retrofit storm drains around the existing businesses and channelizing it where you want the water to go versus where you don't want it to go. So that's another portion that's part of that utility that also would be competing into stormwater, or it's competing into property taxes.
Councilor Townsley, did you have a question earlier?
No, I didn't.
No?
Thank you.
Councilor Ledke?
Dustin, is corrugated metal, or aluminum or whatever it's made out of, was that a common practice of cities all over the United States?
It's a common practice by farmers.
So, yet again, we probably had different resources we could have used, and so we're kind of stuck with figuring out how to fix it and
Yeah,
how to move forward?
corrugated metal is pretty common with rural counties. I came from Asotin County, we had a lot of corrugated metal culverts. I don't think the intent is ever to put corrugated metal 30, 40, 50 feet down in a ravine and then bury it. Things were different in the 60s and 70s. The Clean Water Act wasn't even a thought of in 1965 when they built the mall. So, but yes, that is something that we have inherited.
Counselor?
So with reading this, I mean, and again, it's riveting. I've read the ordinance 3-4 times and I still have to go back and try to find something that I thought was of use. Obviously it references IDAPA, which is Idaho Admin Rules, so that comes from starts with our constitution, goes down into code, and then somebody is writing administrative rule that we have to abide by as a municipality. How is it, is there a resource for the public to read and understand why this is something that we can't walk away from? Like, the permit is something that we didn't go, hey, we should get one. It was, we had to. Because I think that's where, when we talk about user fee versus tax, I immediately want to, okay, well, it's just another tax that we have to, again, I have a different point of view. I choose to live in the city, knowing that a municipality brings a lot more fees and taxes to my household. But I want to be able to give some resources that, because we all know this is for our information. We wish the public would pay attention and listen to you, but is there a resource that they can find that can maybe help them walk through why is this a thing? Is this just the city of Lewiston once again trying to figure out a way to build revenue and take money from people? And then do you feel like the ordinance lays out, second question, do you feel like the ordinance lays out clearly the difference between when somebody has to make those capital improvements on their property versus those user fees, and how we are going to make sure that we're not overcharging and ending back up in front of the Supreme Court?
Yes. Going back to the first question of resources available, I will say, being the Public Works Director and have gone through the last 3 months, 4 months, whatever it's been, I have taken my lumps, and I will say the city, particularly my department, because it appears to be my department creating most of the controversy right now, we need to do a better job listening, and we need to do a better job getting out there and reaching out to the public. And I have been frustrated with stormwater because I feel like I make a lot of presentations to the public, and I don't know, the message doesn't seem to get out very well. We are currently still working on putting together a FAQ public outreach, whether it's on our website or information flyers. I think it would be well worth our effort, whether it's going to the fair, whether it's doing a town hall. This is a big deal. I mean, I think we did hear plenty of public comment tonight saying property taxes are killing us. And I don't disagree. I've seen all of those numbers on both sides of the river, that property taxes are an issue that are increasingly becoming a difficult issue. And so I want to get out in front of those conversations because, full disclosure, the city's budget did not go up. We held the line. And so, but how that relates to a stormwater utility, how it relates to the reservoir repair, these are all connected. And so I'm trying to get out in front of this stuff, but at the rate that we're doing everything that's happening right now, I can't get out fast enough. So to go to the question, yes, the city is putting together documents and trying to get out in front of just simple questions. Why is this happening now? Why is this? How can I have assurance that this is not an illegal tax? Is this money really going to the stormwater fund versus somebody else's pocket? So those are the things that, as an engineer, I didn't go to school for, but those are the things I know people are asking right now. Second question was?
Well, let me just quickly, and I guess that question was more so like, because I know that you guys are being worked over. I want to mince words here. We started the stormwater conversation. It wasn't going great with the public because of property taxes. January happens, now we have this, right? Is there a resource? Because I feel like there's gonna be a little catch-22 there that, are you spending your time writing an FAQ when you're supposed to be fixing the reservoir? So is there resources that maybe us as a council can direct other staff or reach out to other government entities that could provide that information to take a little weight off, but still educate the public? Or does it necessarily have to be specific to us? Because, I mean, obviously, we're not the only city in the country that has stormwater.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of great documents out there, and this is my third state that I've worked in an MS4 permit, and I've seen the evolution from the early 2000s to where we're at today, and it's the same argument. And so a simple Google search of stormwater utility will provide, I mean, much like anything else in Google, you can find the argument that you want and the argument that you don't want. It's out there, but there's plenty of case law federally and even including state of Idaho. There's communities that have had success, and I would say even Asotin County, the regional stormwater program over there has had some decent success, and it's a user fee, and you're paying it to the government, and if you trust that agency, and whether it's been that you've witnessed them do it or you've seen it on TV or news, I think people typically don't disagree paying a fee if they feel like they're getting their money's worth. And so I think that's where, particularly Asotin County, what got out, and we're getting projects and maintenance and even some equipment through grants and making that program move forward at a very minimal staff. There's a lot of other encumbrances that happen with that state on that side of the river, but it seems to have weathered the storm and is moving forward. Over here, I kind of want to use that as the model. If people feel like they're getting their money's worth, they may be more apt to support it.
To clarify my second question, not knowing if this was a team effort or one person writing, do you feel, because I've read it about 4 times and I'm struggling as a lay person and soon to be person that's paying this, to connect my capital improvements, any exemptions, those kind of things, it's a little, the language is a little rough, and so I that is my concern with the ordinance as written, because I believe that we need clear and concise so that people understand it, can reference it themselves, and not work off of my interpretation or even your interpretation, that the ordinance walks them through what this is gonna be like. And so if I'm missing the mark, I will educate myself, but I just wanted to, do you feel like we need to get into this as a council to say, where do we need to beef up some language or spell it out a little different?
Yeah, I mean, it's I don't have the answer to it, because a lot of it is until the right set of eyes looks at it or challenges it. I see it as from the perspective of the purveyor of the utility, not necessarily the person who may have a more legal mind or a unique property or a business that says, yeah, that doesn't work for me because I finally distilled what you're actually trying to say. It is rough language, and there's, and this ordinance was drafted this is probably 4 years old, so it's not a new document. And unfortunately, I myself have read it hundreds of times and still kind of glaze over when I read it. We do have incredible staff. We have Joe Kaufman in the back. We have Jeff Weimer, who is the new stormwater utility manager, and Jason Thompson, who's our street maintenance person, who they are not involved with the reservoir, so they have experience and knowledge and maybe a little bit more free time than the rest of us. So I'm leaning on them. In fact, Jeff has poked me twice to have me review the FAQ page, and I haven't had time since Friday to do it. So I'm optimistic.
Okay, Director, why don't we keep moving? Maybe we'll answer some of our questions as you go along.
From kind of what I wanted to go back to specifically the details of the stormwater utility. And if you recall, there was 2 different drainage basins. And so this just kind of lays out, there's what we called, lack of it, people want to call it orchards versus downtown, but as you can see that map, it's more of the drainage basin, so, or where the water is running through. So we call it Pipe Town and Swale Town. So Pipe Town is delineated in the yellow section, kind of North Lewiston, downtown, Normal Hill, all the way up just about to Bryden there. And the orchards kind of draining off, and so draining off to the backside on Tammany, that's what we call Swale Town. And so there are 2 separate capital projects that defined. The ones in the Pipe Town are more expensive because they are hard pipes that are already buried that need to be repaired, replaced, or maintained, where the swales are more traditionally in the orchards that drain more towards Tammany and have less expense to maintain, replace, or repair. So this, you'll remember, this is the one that we've spent a lot of time talking about. So stormwater utility rate options, the option 1 was no, we just keep doing what we're doing. And you can see roughly typically we put about $644,000 out of property taxes into the stormwater fund, just generally upkeeping the maintenance and some future capital projects. That number doesn't include the stormwater manager, so that is already an outdated number. And so then we said, well, what if we created a utility just based off of that 644 number? And so that would take us 40 years to complete our capital projects. So your utility rate for your service area 1, which is pipes, is $2.40 a month, and service area 2 is $2. That I just don't feel is genuinely, all you're doing is basically paying to keep the lights on. You're not making any improvements. And you can see you're only gonna get 22% of compliance of the permit and only 12% of your capital needs. So from there, we basically quartered it out. So if you wanted to fund your stormwater system and you're going to complete rotate through your capital lists every 25 to 30 years, it's going to be $570 and $470. So you can see we focused on 100% compliance for all of these. So there's no point of creating a stormwater utility if you're not going to be in compliance with your permit. That's why we're creating it. But we're only going to put 25% of the necessary money towards your capital. So it's going to take you 25 to 30 years to complete your list on your capital improvements list. All the way to full capital, and that's a 5-year permit cycle, which is what was recommended within the rate study in the master plan. So you can see those figures, $10.60, $7.75. I come back to the council. If that's the rates you want to continue to go with, that's the direction we've been moving. The reason I keep wanting to bring this up is in a couple months, we'll start talking about budgets. It is very challenging to set a budget for a utility that has never existed up to date. So I have no historic numbers, I have no revenue historic figures. And so if the council got enough public comment and said, we're not comfortable with the $10.60, we're more comfortable to the $8.50 or $7.40 or some other number in there, I would like to have that before we start assembling budgets, because I don't want to get to the point where we talk about budgets and then we take a 20% cut and then we have to go back to the drawing board and reestablish our capital and operations. The one thing I will say for clarifying is this ordinance does not set the rates. The ordinance establishes the ability to set the rates and is undefined within this ordinance. The intent is for this summer, probably May or June, for the council to start adopting the ordinance pending any edits. And then the rates will be set at the same time as we set our other utility rates. So that's, I think, September, August. And those rates would then be enacted January 1. So just so we're clear that, one, this is a work session today. We're not setting anything in stone. Two, the ordinance does not set the rates. It's the future rate resolution that's adopted with all the other water, sewer, sanitation rates. From here, I think I just already laid out we'll continue the public outreach efforts. work towards the adoption of the stormwater ordinance, roll this out January 1 of 2024. That's all I got.
Councilor Forsman?
First of all, I can't imagine being in your shoes right now. I'm sure your phone has been blown up and you are constantly responding to citizens. I know I have been, and I'm not at the head of that. So appreciate your efforts there, and all the hard work you've been doing. Secondly, I think that I'm not gonna say I think because the citizen mentioned that. So I know that the citizens have commented about when we put stuff on Facebook with kind of those blanket terms on these fees and stuff, it's like they're almost getting half the story and then it just leaves them with more questions than answers. So going back to your town hall question or like a Q&A in a sense, I think would be highly beneficial because they can go there and actually express their concerns and then immediately get feedback. As well as I know we have citizens come here, they talk, they say their feedback, and then maybe they have to leave for work or they don't have a lot of time that they can sit here, and so they don't get to hear the responses to what they just said. So I think that would be beneficial. As far as this, can I follow up? Sorry,
Please.
excuse me. As far as this, if we say we went just figuratively to the 5-year, is that something that would be, that's a 10-year, $10.60 for a lifetime? That's what we're like suspecting, or over time as we build up kind of a fund that would start to level out? So I understand.
I honestly, you don't see those utility fees typically going down because what we pay the same cost as everybody else out there. So gas, equipment, everything that we run, we're competing with inflation. So, the capital reserves are built into that number. So, this is a brand new utility, and so there is a certain percentage, much like our water and sewer, which we'll talk about in a little bit. We build these reserves for these rainy days. Sorry, that was bad. I would not intended. We build those for the emergencies, and so there will be a capital reserve built into that. And once that the reserves are built up, maybe you leverage more into capital, but you're constantly fighting inflation.
Right.
And so if inflation, I don't see it going down very often.
And just so I understand the graph, I know we've been going over this, sorry, Mayor.
Councilor.
We've been going over this for a while now. This isn't the first time we've been talking about this. We've been talking about this for a while, and going over it and metabolizing it. So with the 480,000 estimated, that's with the $10 on a monthly fee, still 480,000 is being taken out of property taxes as well to offset that? Is that my
Yep, so
understanding?
this, I didn't call that out. Thanks for calling that out for me. So there was a task force I shouldn't say many years, a couple years ago, 5 to 10 years ago, task force put together. And this was after that Supreme Court decision. And the task force said, okay, let's sit down and talk specifically what makes this utility more palatable. And one of the comments that came back was the city needs to be a part of this. And so all these public right-of-ways, they need to be paying that. So our own Main Street or any other streets that out there, they're impervious, so the city should pay. Okay, well, the city's gonna pay through property taxes. So that's the way the rate is set up, in that the city's going to pay for their portion of their impervious area within the city. And so that portion is $480,000, well, for full capital, it's $480,000 that comes out of property tax. That's, even at full capital, that's still $100,000+ less than that's coming out of it now.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Ledke?
For public input so far is that we say no to all of this. And what do we face if that was the decision of this council? Like, who finds this, how much?
Thank you.
What are we on the hook for?
So it is a federal requirement, but it is administered by the state of Idaho. And so we have to, like I said, turn in the reports annually and identify it's basically a matrix of, did you do this? Did you do this? And it's year 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and you check the box and you provide documentation that you did this stuff. And full disclosure, I mean, we've had this MS4 permit for probably 2 years. I think it was 2020. We've been funding it through property taxes, and so, we have been, holding our own. And I think a lot of people, Councilor Kleberg is sometimes he's a proponent of this, and he wants me to come up here and say, well, they'll come and arrest the mayor and they'll take him to Boise and hold him hostage till we form a utility, and that's not going to happen. That's not. It is an incremental. You are deficient. You didn't do this. You didn't do that, and it would become where we would come to the council at budget time and say, we have $750,000 of needs in improvements, or we need to draft some policies or something. Here's what it is, and you would have to plug it into the budget or not. It would be competing within the property taxes. And again, this typically my experience is the DEQ or the EPA will not tell you have to create a utility. You got to find a consistent revenue source. And a lot of times they push back in that property taxes, because they're at the mercy of the council to fund on an annual basis, where a utility revenue is a consistent revenue, and you can manage programs and capital improvements and manage the permit easier. So they will not tell you to create that. They will just stand by your side to make sure each year you are in compliance with that permit. When they don't, they'll start nudging you, then they'll start poking you, and then they'll start fining you.
Councilor Forsman?
So I'm trying to understand this, because in my head, I'm thinking like, it's a double dipping situation where obviously in order to pay for the city, the property taxes is what pays for the city's Main Street and all that. And then also charging a $10 fee to our citizens is like double charging. So I'm trying to view this, because I don't feel like I have that correct. But would then it offset and maybe save some in the property tax amount, because now the big, like you said, big parking lots and businesses have to pay more than just a standard property tax fee, but they would pay more to provide this fee.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's what you're gonna start seeing is there is a demand. The deferred maintenance costs us money. It is not, and the stormwater system is under maintained. I mean, it is and I don't wanna say it's under maintained. It's maintained to the level in which we fund it. So there's cases of Mount St. Helens ash that is caked on in the bottom of some of these, and we can pull up chunks of it and bring it into you if you want to see it, because it's still there, because it's now concrete at the bottom of these things. And so that just is a more canary in the coal mine. That's these indicators that show you how you've invested or not invested into your system. And so over the course of like the corrugated metal pipe, that will cost you money. I mean, it may not cost you money today, but deferred maintenance will eventually slowly drain you. And so we are in a hole and we're still digging. And so if you want to stop digging, you need to fund it. And then if you want to get out of the hole, you got to fund it incrementally out of that. And my decision is to tell you the condition of the infrastructure and how we can improve it. I'm leaving it up to you guys to tell me how to fund it.
Councilor Forsman?
I guess more of a comment. So you're talking about deferring will cost us in the long run. I feel like that paints the picture today, right? We have buildings that should have gotten probably repaired a long time ago. We have pipes that are now almost at the end. And so it is costing us today versus if we had maybe put in that efforts a while ago, instead of waiting until multiple things are failing at the same time.
I mean, stormwater is not unique to Lewiston. I mean, it is, like I said, phase 2, communities across Montana, Washington, Idaho, everywhere, and Utah, Oregon, everybody is dealing with this same thing. And it's some communities, maybe they were, West Side Washington, a lot of rain. They value stormwater for a good reason more than maybe we would, because they get a lot more rain. And so they have built up systems that are more maintained because they just have so much more water. Communities like us look into it. I mean, Lewiston is one of the oldest communities in Idaho. And you have such old infrastructure sitting on old infrastructure, sitting with old buildings on top of that. There's no easy solution. If you've maintained it throughout the generations, good on you. But I think we find, and it's not specific to Lewiston, it's Moscow, Pullman, everywhere, that a lot of this infrastructure is just, a lot of it's underground and it's forgotten. And I'm here to remind you that it has served a purpose and needs to continue to serve a purpose, and it needs investment.
Councillor Schroeder.
So are we on schedule to do some outreach?
Yeah.
Okay, and I think that it would behoove the counselors to be involved in this, and, because we are elected officials, and so we should be there. We need to have, of course, a script to follow, and, so we give out the correct information. But I'm totally in support of this, and I'm glad that we did go to the full capital at the last time we discussed this, and I'm still there. So I'm eager to get started on that public outreach.
Councillor Towsley.
Yeah, I just want to make sure everybody knew that I do have a voice here. I've been pretty quiet today, but I really appreciate, and I'm glad I'm not in your shoes. And I appreciate all that you're doing during these very trying times. And I think it's important that we have this outreach, because I don't get on the Facebook page all that often. And when I do, I see what we as a city, our gathered knowledge puts out there, and then it's lost. Because so many people want to talk about their spin on all that's gone on, that by the time the last person gets to it, they don't even know what the topic was anymore. And I don't think that's a healthy environment. So I want to do more kinds of things where we are actually, where the rubber meets the road, where we are saying, this is the way it is, this is why we say this. What do you think of that? Instead of people going off on their own spins. It's a horrendous situation, and this is just one more place for them to do that. So, anytime, I will be there, absolutely, and you know I do show up with those things.
And again, a topic, a comment instead of a question. We did talk about full capital. I think that was at a time before we started getting phone calls from sweet, longtime Lewiston residents that are in tears over property taxes, which again, we did not change our property, we took the same levy. I think that public outreach is great, and I will show up. I engage in conversation regularly, and one of the things that I, heard in campaigning was, why do we have to wait? Well, we can go back into that graph, and if you look at it, you can look at those numbers and you're like, wow, we wouldn't have to affect the budget a bunch at 111,000, and the fees would be very little per month, but it would take us 40 years. So am I in trouble for taking 40 years, or am I in trouble for getting things moving and looking at? But in that, I would implore this council to look at the fact that that's $480,000 that I don't plan on voting for any sort of property tax increase. We are going to have to make hard decisions. So that if we go after this, that means we move money, we don't add money. I will not be a proponent for adding, because I like my sweet little longtime residents of this, and that's who I ran for. So we've got to figure that out. However, I also want them to reap some of the benefits of the property taxes they've been giving to us for year after year. And I do feel their fatigue of hearing of failure after failure. And I think that whether or not that's truly what's happening, that's what they feel. That's what you're feeling right now. We need to be ready. I mean, we can talk about, we need to talk real moving forward. If we do this and you want it done quickly, it's gonna cost more, which means we have to look at availability of services. We have to look at compensation to our staff, the amount of staff. There's hard decisions in our future. And if this is something that needs to be done by law, I think it needs to take a little bit of precedence so that maybe you're not having to dig us out of another giant hole.
Okay, councilors, we're gonna wrap this up. Councilor Forsman? No?
Nope.
Thank you, Director. On to our next subject, councilors. Item D, irrigation restrictions update. Director Johnson.
Stare at it. Did you do that with your mind?
I got a mouse. Okay, it's unfortunate we lost a lot of folks here, but we still have a few. So I am gonna give you, I mean, it's 5:30, but these folks sat here long enough. I'm gonna give you soup to nuts, what we've got from the reservoir to irrigation restrictions. I will be here as long as it takes for questions to be answered and people to feel like they were heard.
Sorry. He was just pointing out, are we supposed to be on repair and not up?
No, there was two agendas out. The one I got off the,
It was amended. It's
Oh,
no
excuse
longer-
me.
Yep.
Sorry.
a good sneak preview. All right. Again, kind of going back, there's some repetitiveness, but for you guys, but some folks may have not seen what we've had for the timeline of events. So January 18th, loss of the high reservoir. I will tell you a lot of questions as far as what is the cause. We did put out a press release about a month ago, maybe a little bit longer, that identified that there was what appears to be a communications loss. The reservoir was overtopping when our staff showed up at 4 a.m, which appears to undermine the earthen embankment, which caused enough of it to scour out, and the concrete wall tipped over and released somewhere between 3 and 4 million gallons of water. That triggered a boil order that is required by the state DEQ water regulations. Essentially, when that wall came down and part of the roof collapsed, the water system of the city of Lewiston was exposed to the environment. It was a challenge communicating what that meant, because from my perspective, that reservoir was built in the 1920s, and that reservoir was uncovered for the first 35 years of its life. And now we're going to tell people it's unsafe to drink the water. But that is the state requirement, that's the state law, so we had to put a boil order in. In those 8 days, from the 18th to the 26th, essentially the city staff rolled out the plans and looked at how we could redistribute the water away from that reservoir, cut it off, and then still keep pressure within the system. One key component of what that reservoir did, when we lost 3 million gallons out of it, we still had 1 million gallons in the bottom of it, which kept pressure on the system. So the system never lost pressure. When you lose pressure in a water system, the water in a pipe is trying to get out. That's why when you turn your faucet on, it comes out. And so when you lose pressure, the pressure goes in the opposite direction. So that can introduce all kinds of different contaminants. The pipe, who has been maybe pressurized in that direction at that pressure for 100 years, is not used to the new force, and it collapses. And so there's all the benefit. The one good thing that did happen during all of this in January was we never lost pressure. We never collapsed any pipes. We transferred the system to distribute water differently from the way it's designed. And so essentially starting in January 27th, we came out and balancing the system. And so if you know Lewiston, we are sitting here basically at the base of Lewiston. Lewiston's water system is on a tiered system. So you have multiple water pressure zones. And so if you were to feed the reservoir all the way up at the golf course down to right here, you would have too much pressure and it would blow the wall out. So you have to step that pressure down incrementally from the top to the bottom. And so we now had to feed the water differently from where it's at. These are called pressure reducing valves. We had to tie them into the new system. And so essentially the same thing that's happening today is we are feeding the water. It used to come from high reservoir going east to west through transmission lines that are 2 foot in diameter to feed it out to neighborhoods. Then it's distributed out into the local distribution network. Well, now that's off. So now we're feeding water from the south. And those lines, we're feeding it through neighborhoods. We're feeding it through 8-inch lines to get to the main street. And so That's why it is different from all of these other water conservation efforts that you hear. Typically, so Lloyd, when they have the irrigation restrictions, they do not have enough source water in Mann Lake to provide everybody irrigation for that day. So they say, if you got an even number address, you're gonna water on this day. If you have an odd number address, you're gonna water on the other day. We have all the source water we can handle. We have multiple wells running, feeding that water. It's the distribution system that we can't get it to. So the heart of the system, at least for the high reservoir, is Normal Hill. So if everybody on Normal Hill just cranked on the water, our system could not provide water. We would just not have enough water through those smaller pipes to get to Normal Hill. And so that is why if we let half of the neighborhood or the other half go, at this point, I don't think it could provide it. We'll get into more details about the irrigation restrictions later, but I kind of got on a sidebar talking about the timeline of events. So February, essentially analyzing the system, trying to balance it out, because we didn't know how well that system would maintain. So we had our water crews running 24/7, going out there, tweaking the system, monitoring the system, you take hydrant pressures. And so we were taking new hydrant pressures to see, are we compliant with fire code? Are we losing pressures at different times of the day? What is this system operating like this? And tweaking it and finding different valves and opening up their other parts of the system. That took February. We're getting the technical analysis. Fortunately for the city, we had an engineering firm and a contractor building the water treatment plant on site at the time. So we are feeding them information, and they're running large models to tell you, okay, this is how you're going to tweak the system, and this is how it's going to run. So the first couple weeks are essentially just trying to get the system balanced. And we can walk and chew gum at the same time. Concurrently, the engineering firm, city staff, we're going in there and analyzing the system. As far as the reservoir, what do we got to do? That is 4.5 million gallons of water, kind of, as I said, feeding the heart of the city system right there at Normal Hill. We need to find a way we can't move that reservoir. All the pipes, as I've already said, are feeding off from that other area. So to put a reservoir somewhere else in the system essentially wouldn't do us any good. So we start looking at it. What's dictating the replacement of this reservoir is materials. There is not enough time to, case in point would be, we have a 1.7 million gallon tank, reservoir, steel tank, that's up by the high school. That one started in 2019. 4 years later, we still don't have the reservoir online. To design it, to get a contractor to bid it and give you a price, then manufacture it and build it, or manufacture the materials, then get them here to build it. It takes an immense amount of time. And so we hit, I'm thinking beginning of February, we were already calling out what materials, whether it was preformed concrete, modu tanks that are temporary tanks that are basically a temporary fix, replacing the reservoir or fixing the reservoir we got, looking into liners, steel tanks, all these different tanks. And really the big, larger volume fixes are too many months out. I think some of the early returns where we can get you something in there in November. So those were kind of off the table from the beginning. So then we're looking at repair of the tank or repair of the reservoir or the modu tank. And so we were looking into what does this reservoir look like? As you all are aware, it's a 100-year reservoir. I think it was 2024, so not quite 100 years. It's got a giant hole on the side. It's got a roof that was built in the 50s, or at least the wood frame was built in the 50s. It had a new roof built on it in somewhere in the 2000s. So trying to go through the levels of construction, having structural engineers having geotechnical engineers look at it, because we weren't sure, was this thing leaking? What does the ground look like around it? So we went out there and did ground penetrating radar, and there was no leaks. This was an isolated, it appears to be tied to one event. There was no leaks coming out of this reservoir before. The staff was not aware of any issues we talked about deferred maintenance. All inspection reports, this is 100 years old. It's time to start thinking about replacement, but there were no red lights as far as this thing is failing or this thing is failing or thing is failing. So none of that was identified. And then March, we started realizing our opportunities are basically a temporary water holding system or repair of the existing reservoir. I think it was March, we approved a $300,000 temporary or small bit of demo to go in there and pull out, because the glue lamp beams were hanging down there, to clear out the deck so we could bring in engineers to look at it, evaluate what's going in there. And so that was done. We had a couple cranes out there for a week pulling all the things apart, went in there, and that's where more bad news on top of bad news is that the roofing material on top, it was fine serving its purpose, but it's 50, 60, 70 years old, dry rot and wear. It was gonna take more time that we didn't have to build a new roof on top of that. And so that we hit a roadblock, and that was 2 weeks ago of, sorry, option A is not viable. We have to move forward and find option B. So then we started leaning towards the Modu tank. The Modu tank, I'm not a fan of. It's a couple, I think it's 100,000 to 300,000 gallons of water. It's essentially building an outdoor pool that you can buy at Walmart. You build it, it's short, it's temporary, and it's just, it would get us through irrigation season, and it was on the same schedule as what we're on right now, and it's throwing money out the window. So, if we're gonna be pushing irrigation restrictions into July, why would we put something up temporary that's not gonna last for more than a year or two? So, moving into essentially May, I'll get into the details of it. The current plan is to take the roof off, get rid of the entire roof, line the existing reservoir. Everything, as I've said, appears to be sound on the geotech analysis, and line it and fill it and put a floating lid on top of it, which is kind of a standard, I guess. Oil and gas uses these types of systems pretty regularly. So that is the effort that we've been up to date. I echo everyone else's frustration in the timing. Between the availability of just getting all of the information. I mean, when we're looking at solutions, we're at the mercy of the supply chain. I keep saying that regarding, steel manufacturing is very slow. Concrete, something of that size is an enormous undertaking, and getting it, designed, getting it approved for the DEQ, it has been nothing short of a major undertaking by city staff, the consulting engineers beyond Boise, Seattle, I'm not sure where all, helping us do this at all ends of the spectrum, trying to call in all our favors that we can. It's, like I said, with the tank up at the high school, that's a 4-year project, and so we're trying to get this one done in 6 months. It doesn't prevent, I understand, people are upset, I'm frustrated, I'm tired, I'm angry, but there's just no way of getting 2 to 4 million gallons of water safely in that location expeditiously beyond 6 months. You've seen this slide. This is the general water consumption of the city. So this slide on the y-axis, on the left-hand side, this is how many millions of gallons is consumed by the city on a daily basis. So we average in the winter somewhere between 2 and 3 million gallons. That's what we call base demand. And so when this failed in January, we were very fortunate that it was in January, because if it happened in August, we would be absolutely no irrigation whatsoever, because the system just can't maintain, peak demand. I think this was that really hot year 2 years ago. We peak at about 9 million gallons a day. So if you kind of do your high school math here, we're right around this 4 million gallons a day. This weekend was a really good test. I did not receive any calls, but my phone did not leave my side the entire time. I'll get into the details of what this weekend meant. I want to walk through this, and this is, I'm sorry, if this is, you can hush me along, but this is the water system that the city of Lewiston operates, and it's not spatially correct. It's more of, so we've got different pressure. We've got a low zone, a high zone, and a west system. And so somebody may ask, why does North Lewiston and downtown have no irrigation restrictions? The only tie between the low system and the high system is the water treatment clear well. So they're almost extensively two separate systems. They've got their own reservoir, they've got their own well, and a little trade secret here right now, we're trying to get that water plant running, and we have nowhere to, you can see the water from the treatment plant goes directly into High Reservoir. We have nowhere to put that water, and so that thing wants to hum, and we have nowhere to put the water. So I'm asking everybody, take an extra drink of water in downtown and North Lewiston so we have somewhere to put that water so we can test this new treatment plant. There's a certain level of irony that we need to clear the system so we have somewhere to put test water, but we're trying to restrict irrigation on all the rest of the system. So here's your reservoir. Essentially in this model, Normal Hill is right here. And so you are generally, what is feeding the Normal Hill right now is well 7. Well 7 is the brand new well that was approved with the SRF project and the bond 2-3 years ago. It can produce about 3 million gallons a day. So if you go back to this slide with all of our other wells, you can kind of start seeing it. Again, source water is not that important because it's the restriction of the small pipes. But when you consider how much water that well can produce and keep it going into the high system, that is our most valuable asset right now. Skipping ahead slightly, that well ran 18 of 24 hours this weekend on average. So that tells you, since we have no stored water, that well is at about 75% capacity right now. So that tells you how our system operates. But that doesn't, again, source water is not completely tied to the irrigation restrictions, because if everybody ran it at that same hour, it couldn't keep up with it. But that tells you, I mean, High Reservoir, or well 7 has its own reservoir, so we have capacity in the system, but it's feeding back into Normal Hill. There was questions regarding the Elks and everything kind of north of us. I will say we need to see how the system operates before we commit. This is what I will commit to. We will continue to analyze this system on a daily basis and come back with recommendations for the public. There may be some relaxations as we get into areas that are not directly impacting this part of the system, but that's to be determined. I don't want to overpromise something and say we're going to lift this and these neighborhoods are going to be unrestricted and then have to come back because something catastrophic happened and now we're into no irrigation whatsoever. And so that kind of shows you generally, this is kind of my Bible right now, trying to understand as we're trying to backfeed water into the system. It is an extremely, I will stand up here and tell you, it is the most complicated water system in the state of Idaho. It's because of the elevations, because of the source water, because of where the piping and the network runs. It's non-traditional. We've inherited it. It's a good system. We're investing in it. With well 7, other reservoirs, the improvements to the water treatment plant, we're getting there. We're making those improvements. It's gonna get better, I promise. But this reservoir came at the reservoir rupture happened at a terrible time, but it is getting better, I promise you that. Again, these are the zones, so this correlates to that other graph in the map, and so you can see this is the reservoir rupture. This purple zone, that is ground zero. That is where there is all the water source for this purple zone came out of this high reservoir, and so now we're back feeding from these other zones, going north to south instead of east to west. So every cup of water coming out from over here or over here is a cup that can't be distributed over here. So we're in this together. There's areas of influence as you get further down over here that I'm not quite clear what those impacts are. So far, the indication is good, but I will come back and I will commit that I will come back and keep everybody informed. If I can lessen the restrictions and save as much landscaping as I can, I will do it. I want to do it, but I can't promise it to you today. So the basics of what these restrictions are, again, we're limited by the delivery. The pipes are too small to get it where it needs to be. It's not the source. Alternating daily, yes.
Sorry, I just wanna make sure, so I'm understanding and kind of putting it in layman's terms. The pipes, you're saying, aren't big enough to supply all the water. What if you just did it? Is that blown pipes? Is that what we're looking at?
Yeah, I don't have enough water to give you. So when everybody turns it on and runs it, that's when the system goes dry. You know, the reservoir of 4.5 million gallons previously with the old plant, in the August, we'd run that plant 20 hours a day, and we'd go home for 4 hours, and you could watch the tank kind of slowly drain, and then we'd turn it back on, it would fill back up. We don't have that option now.
Thank you.
So yeah, the entire system is now feeding that normal hill, that high zone. Well 7, again, I already said that, 75 to 85% capacity this weekend. Don't want to get, that's not a magic number. Initially, when we started talking about the irrigation restrictions, we thought about, we'd give you the Smokey the Bear kind of thing of today's really bad, no irrigation, today's okay, but it's not, I can't tell you exactly. There's about 3 or 4 different areas where it's feeding in from one zone to the other. And if the draw from one neighborhood is greater than it had been previously, that's gonna be where it's gonna collapse. The city does not control irrigations, automated systems or any other people's water use. And so when they turn it on, it automatically takes it out of the system. And that kind of goes back to the question of automated sprinklers. So with hand watering restrictions only, we can get out and say, turn it off. Something happened or there was too much demand, turn it off. If everybody has their sprinklers scheduled for Mondays and Wednesdays and Fridays, I can't get out fast enough. I can't get the irrigation companies to turn those off because they're all automated. And so if the system's overly taxed or depressurized, and then all the other sprinklers just keep in series going off, that just makes the situation from bad to worse. Soaker hoses, drip lines, and even my personal system, my system at home has a drip system tied to the irrigation system. That's okay. Those are low flow. It's the sprayers when those sprayers turn on, essentially your entire water meter runs that zone. That's why there's multiple zones, is because you can't run all of your zones at the same time because that's too much water demand. So that's why, and I want to find a way to save all of these trees. I mean, the hierarchy of our needs are potable drinking water and fire suppression, number 1. Number 2 is delicate landscaping, trees, vegetation, whatever we can to try and preserve that. Right now, sod is a huge consumer of water, and I can't guarantee that we can provide enough water for everybody to keep those yards emerald green. It's just, that's the hierarchy that we have to deal with right now.
Councilor Lidke?
Okay, let's go back to your fix real quick, because I need to understand something. So, thank you for the longer term solution. Are we being held back on the availability of that due to our procurement and bid process?
No, when you declared the emergency, we do not have to go through the full procurement process.
We can't throw money at it to speed it up.
Money does not solve this right now. It is the availability of the goods and manufacturing of them.
Councilor Forsman?
I've had, obviously, the daycares, my son actually goes to Fingerprints, so that church that had that public comment. And as well as parents talk about like little splash pads or ways to keep the kids cool during the summer. Is that similar to a drip system, or is that gonna put is that kind of a no-go?
I don't see that as an issue, no. I mean, car washes. The major car washes in town run recycled water. So I have the top 25, 50 large water consumers. I've already reached out to them. There was not a car wash on that list. So I can pull them and see what they use, but it's not our top users. We've been reaching out to all of them. But going back to your splash pads, the slip and slides, the kiddie pools, that's not gonna have a major impact on the system.
Can we maybe put that on?
Yep.
So that the public knows that they're not gonna be
Yeah.
fined $300 for getting a splash pad out in their
Yeah.
yard.
Yeah, I wanna, as I've said, open it up as best I can. I've already met with LCSC in Harris Field, I've already met with the school district, I've met with parks, and the golf course. Everybody is, those are the major users, and I'm hoping with them reducing their water by 95%, that will clear a lot, give us a lot more breathing room in the system, because just the amount of water those 5 users in themselves that will impact the system in itself. So I'm hoping that gives us enough breathing room. I was encouraged by this weekend, but well 7 is concerning. That at 80%, that's a lot of water. Well 6 was not as high. So that tells me that north side is kind of managing itself, or south side is managing itself, but I need more time. The weather's gonna come back to spring, so I'm hoping as we kind of slowly ramp our way through the temperatures and irrigation demands and just communicating to the public and the big users, we can kind of find that balance of keeping things alive.
Councilor Whitke.
In the beginning, when you showed us the map, the low wind, what did we call it? Low system? Okay, you said if they could take extra drinks of water, so they're not gonna be on restrictions, right? So
Correct.
say somebody on Snake River Avenue is not on restrictions. Could I, as a person on Snake River Avenue, say, run a little more water, fill up a water tank and work with entities like Harris Field or just even private citizens to say,
Yes,
these are workable solutions that through private citizen relationships could be something because this part and Lloyd, but within the customer base, could those solutions be found?
What's unfortunate, yes. So in my conversation with LCSC last week, they are looking at collectively trying to, water trucks, taking water from the low system, driving it up to LCSC and getting those areas that are in dire need of water. And and they were talking about kind of coming up with a co-op where maybe it's the school district, maybe it's the LCSC, maybe it's the golf course. If we can kind of pool the resources, we can keep a water truck running, till July and hit those spots. Now the downer of it is, when you look at 9 million gallons, the tanker is gonna fill you maybe 4,000 gallons. It's not, you're not gonna solve all of your problems with that, but it will help get some of these desperately needed areas. You can really soak them with that truck.
At 4,000 gallons, it's 250 trucks to supply 1 million.
It's not Dunkirk.
But it could save us from total detriment.
Yeah, that was the encouraging part of the meetings I had last week between the golf courses looking at an additive that golf courses use down in Arizona and Texas that makes the grass more drought tolerant. It costs money, but they don't have any water, so they're gonna use that. We talked LCSC doing the water truck. So there's some creative solutions out there that the community is starting to come up with. And, my availability is less, but I want to talk to people. I'm meeting with people tomorrow to talk about people who sodded their houses last week. I can't in good faith tell them, cut it, it's gotta go. But I also there's no exemptions in the code. There's alternative watering schedules, and I want to work with everybody to do what we can. But, it's like Jennifer has that massive field. Jennifer Junior High's got that massive field. They've committed that's gonna have minimal irrigation and abide by the restrictions.
So with your updates, are you thinking that we could provide weekly updates to the public maybe of how you're evaluating the system?
I think so. It's a catch-22, and this is something we've looked at right now because right now there's some commercial businesses there. We have water guys going out there, will be going out there and just knocking on doors and say, hey, we need you to help us out. And they're the same people who are gonna be operating the system. Then we have the water manager who's kind of trying to keep all this together. Plus, we're trying to get the reservoir back online. It's just, there's a bandwidth capability, and if I don't have any news, I don't have any news. But I mean, we have a PIO, and even if we don't have any news, we will say, system is maintaining as it was last week, no new updates or no new changes to the system. And the other component to it, which we've struggled with, is that if we start modifying it, whether it's more restrictive or less restrictive, it needs to be understandable. So, when we rolled this map out, we needed to make sure that if I click on the map and I click on or search for my address, I can know I'm in or out. And so if I'm saying, if your street has an M in it, and you, on Wednesdays, you have 2 hours of watering or something, I gotta make it digestible and understood, and I gotta be able to say, something happened, it's done. So, trying to find that, it's typically, in my job, it's there's a lot of cookbooks in engineering, I look it up, that's how we do it. This is uncharted territory because of it's not a source problem, it's a distribution problem.
Mr. Forsman?
To go back to a comment about if, things are dying and the fires, because now we have dry shrub everywhere and dry grass. Obviously, that is a concern. As well, though, as if we can kind of touch base a little bit, if we run out of water because we just don't do anything, and you still have fires, because fires happen even if people are keeping their grass green, excuse me. What does that mean for the fire department if there's a big building fire or something happens for controls?
I can let Chief Michael Buss speak to that, but I mean, that's what, I don't have the water to sell you or provide into the system. And so we have to, as I said, the hierarchy of number one is keeping potable water in the system and having adequate fire flows to fight that. I can let Travis speak to if it does lose fire flows.
Yeah. Travis Michael Buss, Fire Chief. It's a great question. One of the things is, yes, if we have dried vegetation and it creates a fire outside that spreads to a building, if we have adequate fire flow in our hydrants, I can keep that fire to the building of origin. If I don't have adequate fire flow in the fire hydrants, then I take a whole different strategy of containing the fire to the block of origin to then the area or the zip code of origin. You want to talk about what we call an urban conflagration. If we don't have adequate fire flow and we get large fire, it's going to jump so fast that we're not going to lose a home. We're going to lose neighborhoods, and that is one of the things. So having the fire flow for me is the deal. I can fight a house fire. I don't want anyone to have a fire, but we can fight a house fire. We do have a plan in place to utilize our structure. That will allow us to only fight maybe 1 or 2 houses at the same time. Anything above that, we do not have adequate fire. So that's why this fire hydrant system is so important we don't lose, because if it is, go back, Great Chicago fires and all that where you lose communities, that is exactly it. It changes our whole philosophy because we can't get ahead of it. So that's my fear, is we keep the system as is. I live in this system, I'm gonna be impacted by it, I don't like it. But I also don't want an entire block or a community of our city to burn. And so that's one of the things we'll take very close eye on. We'll be as aggressive as we can.
Councilor Forsman?
Thank you for saying that. I just wanted to express that we are thinking about that and that this is the forefront of our brain is the safety of the neighborhood, fires happening. This is why it's being taken so seriously. And this is why kind of the scare to the people, and not that we wanted to do that, but that we do care about this and we're trying to do something about it. And it's already been discussed. We have been talking about this at prior council meetings. So this isn't just something that we've thrown at the citizens. Whether we could have done that differently, I don't know. But we have been discussing it. So I appreciate you detailing explaining what the worst case scenario, because sometimes we need to have that.
The only thing I want to add on that is it is May 1st, with rain in the forecast, cooler temperatures. Now is the time where we can, as the water purveyor and the citizens, we can start finding a balance. I know it's going to be a challenging summer. I don't see it being that doom and gloom where every grass is dead and we've got hot spots and it's, I know we can get through this. It's just, we have a limited resource of water. And if we can handle it responsibly and divvy it out how it is available in our priorities of need, I think we can get through it.
One last one.
Counselor Forsman.
Can we put anything out there to the citizens on ways that they can collect water for a later date as far as barrels?
Yeah, we had talked about, the water guys came to me this morning and said, Nez Perce County, they do a lot of mag chloride, which takes a lot of water, and so they fill up typically somewhere else. So we offered in North Lewiston for them to fill up at that hydrant like they would normally. And so the guys said, hey, why don't we could set up a water distribution place for, it wouldn't be for commercial use beyond, like the tanker trucks for mag chloride, but for residents who had, they were spraying or something, had a large volume, it's under consideration. We have the hydrants for it and we could set it up. It just have to be manned during a particular time. And again, taking somebody away from, running the system, we may not have the assets to do it, but we could consider it. I just don't know how utilized it would be.
Sorry, I went off the wrong, I was more thinking of home collection, so you collecting it from your gutters or to be able to.
Yeah, I mean, that goes back to our last topic of stormwater.
Right, exactly.
Rain barrels and those are things that, we are part of a stormwater system that's managed, is utilizing that and using that for irrigation. It can be considered, but by June or July, those do dry up.
Okay.
I just have a little bit more to provide. So as going back to the questions, talking about the rehab for High Reservoir, final design is ready. I have a surprise for you. You guys have a special meeting coming up you don't know about yet, but I couldn't get the contract in my hands and meet the noticing requirements for this meeting, so we'll be doing a noticing for a special meeting at some point, hopefully Wednesday at noon, but that's not official. That's just, we need to get this contract underway, but we have the final, I guess it's not the final, but it is the final proposal to do what I already told you, which is lay a liner within the existing reservoir, remove the existing roof structure, knock it all down, repair the concrete and put in an updated overflow, and install the floating roof structure on top of that. In construction, it's called the critical path. The critical path item is that floating roof. I guess they might get tired of hearing me call them, I guess, of where's it at, when can we get it? That is the one, so that gives us, there'll be obviously a beehive of activity up there trying to get the site prepped. That's not the critical path item, it's the manufacturer of that. They've got to design it, manufacture it, and ship it, and get it here, and get it online. The phase 2 cost is $2.4 million. I will have a complete financial breakdown for you when I come back for that special meeting, but I think it came up last time, we have rainy day funds and reserves within our enterprise funds. And I said, we roughly, it depends on how we can move money from future projects to this, and we may have to.
Save this for another discussion. This is not the topic we're on.
Okay. Complete in July. That's when the irrigation restrictions will end. That is at the mercy of the supply chain, the floating roof structure. We asked the consultant today, is that a conservative timeline? He said that's probably a realistic timeline. So we could hopefully trim some days, some weeks off of that, but at the mercy of the supply chain. So as I've said, I will be available for questions for the public, for the council, for anybody who wants to talk to me. I share their frustrations. I am sorry. I never in my life thought I would ever be in this situation. We are doing all that we can. And I I know it's hard to be put in that situation as the public and then have the city come and say, we need your help. But I know we do need their help to get through this, and I know it will get better. As I've said, we're investing in this infrastructure. We're starting to see all of the investments come online. It's just unfortunate that this event happened when it happened. So with that, I'm here for questions.
Thank you, Director. I think we have most of them answered. We're gonna go for a new record, I think, 4 hours here pretty soon, so for work session. But you didn't let us down or disappoint us at all.
Thank you.
So much.